If I allow myself to dream, will it be as good as it seems? Pull me out of this place in the middle. Nothing more to embrace in the middle. If I try to climb.
This is a true crime discussions channel. We speculate. This is all just speculation. Because it's true crime, it's for mature audiences only. There will be no children allowed, no exceptions. Everything on this channel falls under fair use. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It's free.
Hey y'all, sorry for the weird things. I was trying to figure out how to gift memberships. I did figure out how to do a poll, so make sure y'all participate in that. Nobody can see like who like I can't tell who specifically says yes or no, just by the way. And I just wanted to know what y'all thought about that. Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up. I cannot figure out how to gift the memberships yet, but I will be working on that. I want to say hey to y'all. Hey, Bad Girl, Abellis, Thomas, Sarah, Shaboogies, Anders, Cara, Shaboogies again, Thomas again, Sarah again, Bad Girl again, Cara. Good to see y'all all. I'm so glad y'all are here with me today. I saw Anders. I don't know if I said hey to you. Hey, Rachel. Good to see you. Shaboogie said Bueller. Trying to see if there's anybody else. If I missed your name or if you're here, make sure you comment so I can shout you out. All right. So right now I have two news station where Richard Allen went up on the news station. Not Richard Allen. Richard Allen's attorneys went to the news channels and spoke to them. And what's so important about these interviews is that the gag order has been lifted. So they're able to speak a bit more candidly now. And that makes it more interesting because I don't know about y'all, but for a while now, I have wondered what these attorneys think behind the scenes, what they really felt about the Odinism aspect, about Richard Allen and all of that. Hey, Ashley, good to see you. And so I found it interesting, and I wanted to go over these with y'all today. This weekend, I will also be going over another interview they did with a YouTuber. I think I'll do that one on Saturday. So today, we are going to start with the news channels interview of them. I'm going to drop the links to these channels in the description box, and I will pin the comments. This is from Fox 59 News. Please give them a like and subscribe. Again, I will drop their link in chat in just a minute. And yeah, we'll get started. I'm sorry that the live was scheduled late. I do apologize about that. I had a horrible toothache last night, and it was straight satanic, if I'm being honest. So I was dealing with that, and when I was finally able to fall asleep, it was like 3:00 in the morning. Like, I could not even think or concentrate. Still hurts a little bit now, but I'll be all right. But that's why the live was scheduled late today. Hey, Rachel and Joy and Thomas again. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and play this, and I'll grab their links and drop them for you guys.
In 2 years to stay in public that you couldn't say outside the courtroom.
I mean, it's rough right now because we want to remain on Rick's case, and we're really nervous. You know, the state has been, the law enforcement, particularly Doug Carter and Holman, have been going out and saying a lot of, what I would say absurd things. And we weren't, I particularly was kind of advocating, and I think we were all in agreement that perhaps we would not even do any media. That was a consideration until those guys came out and started saying all this stuff. So it's very difficult for us to talk and even answer that question is difficult, I'd say, just because, in the end, we're going to say whatever we're going to say, and we're doing media stuff. And, but it's nerve wracking because of the way that things have been handled in the past in terms of trying to get us off the case and that kind of stuff. We're kind of peering into the future and concerned that anything we're going to say is going to be used later on.
There's a lot of commentary out in social media and news that, how upsetting it was to people that the defense came up with a wild Odinist theme. That did not come from.
Okay, so you guys, let me know what you think about the quote unquote wild Odinist theme. I'm going to get Professor BS up for y'all. And again, please let me know. Like, I would love to know. I know I've got some people here that believe Richard Allen is guilty, and I would love to get your thoughts on that. Oh no, I hope I didn't. I know I didn't. There he is. I was like, I know I didn't lose Professor BS. Okay. If you feel different about this case, please let me know, because I would love to know what your thought process is on whether he is guilty or innocent. And if you think he's guilty, I would love to know why. So I'm going to drop the link I'm going to pin the link for the news station, and I'll also drop the link in case anybody wants to come up and talk.
From the defense. Brad and Andy did not make that up. That came from the U.S. Marshals Behavioral Analysis Unit. That came from the FBI. There was some validation from a Purdue professor. This all came from the state. This was released in Discovery thanks to Todd Click. But these aren't things we made up. These are law enforcement theories that they inexplicably did not follow up on.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it wasn't just those things. It was also Kevin Murphy's work, who's a former state trooper with an impeccable record. He put out a 12-page report that.
So it's interesting to hear that the Odinist theory that everybody thought was just so crazy was actually the law enforcement came up with that. And they didn't follow through with it. I know that they actually made a task force to look into that aspect of this case. But it wasn't allowed to be brought up at trial, which I found interesting. So the clip for this news station, and actually this video that we're watching right now, is pinned at the top of the comment section. Hey, Shaboogies, good to see you, love.
Hey, my ass was coming up.
I appreciate it. I like your input. Cara said the Odinist situation is just way too dang weird. The fact that the girls had all Nordic runes around them, and the FBI were even looking to the Odinist, and the prison guards had Odinist patches. Right, and to go further into that, they were asked to remove the patches. They cited freedom of religion, and they came with an Odinist symbol tattooed on their face to work. I don't know, you could cite freedom of religion, but being at a prison and housing an inmate that could directly, like, it could hurt that person or the case. I think that the government could have a stance in saying, I understand that it's your religion, but you can't promote that here right now during this time. And then ban any kind of religious symbols from being presented is what I think they would do. Hey, Tony and Bazard, good to see you guys. Rachel said, my opinion is the investigation was formed to pick a fall guy due to pressure for a prosecution. I've been watching this for years. I think so too. I think it's interesting how the Richard Allen was picked just as the sheriff was up for re-election, and actually him finding him, I think from what I remember, turned the election around and helped him get reelected.
Lieutenant Jerry Holman.
Yes.
Fun fact too, I just learned this actually from, I believe, one of the interviews. There was a tattoo parlor across from, or in Delphi, in like downtown Delphi, called Odin's Den. And
Yep.
that's where a bunch of these Odin dudes got their tattoos. And then when trial was beginning, they changed the name, and now it's like totally closed.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there was a picture. I saw a picture of that tattoo den and somebody talking about it. I need to see if it's in Discord so I can show you guys. But yeah, that's interesting. I remember reading about that. That was
Crazy.
super interesting.
Crazy.
Yes, it was. Okay, Bazard. I hope to see you soon, love. Rachel said those reports are why they kicked the FBI off the case. Right. Exactly. It's crazy. Thomas said there was an ex-prison guard link to Odinism that shot one of the detectives. Yes, I did a live on that not too long ago, and I was like, whoa. Yeah, I didn't even know that one of the detectives was shot and the FBI arrested the man and he was a prison guard. Yeah. Ron Logan, thank you. No, I don't think it was Ron Logan. I think it was somebody else. But yeah, that is accurate from what I remember reading. Cara said, I think the real guy who did it passed away. His name was Ron something. Ron Logan. That's what Sarah was answering. Yeah. But even the guy's girlfriend said he bragged to her about doing it, but then he passed away. Yep. And he lived directly beside, I think he owned the property where they were found, or like.
Yeah. He was like on the property. It was his property where they were found, and then also directly by there was Brian Weber's property, and Brian Weber is the man with the van.
Yep. Thank you so much. Hey, Hio, I'm so glad to see you today, my love.
That we received in discovery. I was in the office right next door to here, in my office on a Saturday morning when I came upon it, and it had some really mind-blowing things that Murphy had found and reported. And then, I don't know that we were ever supposed to get that report, but we got it. And that really led us to a lot of, investigation of other people. And when we started to put the pieces together, then the Franks memo happened that kind of, exposed all of that, that defense. And, Carter apparently said that he thought the gag order was violated when we filed the Franks memo. What he doesn't know is it would have been illegal for us to file the Franks memo confidentially. It has to be filed because we're a transparent state. And by the way, the state is the one that asked for the Franks memo. They asked for the Franks memo, and we gave it to them. And it's all based upon anybody that says that it is some kind of crazy story.
So yeah, any kind of thing like that they file has to be public. That's why we were able to get the Franks memo, and we've talked about it here a little bit. and it's in the Discord, it has to be public. And it seems like, yeah, they got kind of irritated with the Frank's memo and lost their mind kind of after that, the state.
Story, please read it. Please read it. I know it's 136 pages and it's long. Part of the reason it's long is because it's footnoted. Everything is backed up. If there's some opinion or conjecture, I believe it's identified. This is an opinion right here based upon these facts that are backed up.
Did Judge Gull run and administer this trial in this case to keep out the extraneous issues, to streamline this case to the provable nexus facts, or did she run the case in such a way as that jury could only go to one destination?
That is something I don't feel comfortable saying. I mean, we have great appellate lawyers that have entered their appearance, Stacey Ulian and Mark Lehman, and those are going to.
I have a video, maybe we can watch it, that talks about other suspects in this case. There's an Elvis, I think it's Elvis Fields. He actually asked the detective if his spit was found on one of the girls, but he could explain it away, would he be in trouble? And I'm like, what? Like, and they had all this information, and let's not even forget to mention all of the interviews that they lost at the beginning of this, when they were first starting to question people. There's a lot in this case. I'm trying to think if I think Ron Logan's talked about in my video. We'll have to play that today and talk about it. Real quick, Ashley said groups like that always have their hands all in law enforcement for this specific reason. Yep.
Yeah, especially a small town.
Yeah. I mean, that it goes back. It reminds me of Letcher County too. Speaking of, I tried to FOIA that to get information, and because I'm not a resident of Kentucky, I cannot get that information. Anybody that is a resident of Kentucky that wants to help me out with that, please email me. I would love to get that. Thomas said Ron Logan's girlfriend said she thought he did it and he was violent and hit her several times. One time with a ratchet in the head. Yep, and she had to go to the hospital. Absolutely. Tony said, I think he's the fall guy as well, talking to Anders. Anders said, yes, Logan seems to have been an asshole, and he made a fake alibi before the murders happened. Yeah, he said he spent 8 hours at a tropical fish store, and we were talking about, I would love to know if he even had a fish tank in his house, because I bet he didn't. Rachel said the Frank's memo has lots of facts that are backed up. Yep. Good morning, Heather. Real quick, 2 more comments. Rachel said he can't say anything about how horrible Judge Gull was, but I can. She didn't let them defend him. Yeah, the thing about it is it irritates me because you convicted this man and you didn't even present all the evidence. If he had been convicted and you presented all the evidence, then I would say definitively, without a doubt, that Richard Allen was guilty. But you can't convict a man when you're not letting the jury have all the evidence. Hey, Bazard.
Hey, ooh, almost lost my voice. Hey, everyone. Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, I've been waiting to talk more about this particular case.
Same.
Yeah, well, just when you brought up with the evidence, like I've discussed with other people online and in my personal life, where the only thing they could directly, circumstantially tie Richard Allen to at least the crime scene was the unused spent bullet that was found. Was it like 5 or yeah, thank you. It was days later.
Mm-hmm.
And yet and I guess really well the several alleged confessions in the prison that he was already how many months in solitary confinement in that prison by then?
Like, 5 to 6.
Okay.
Eating his own feces. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And to me, it just baffles me how the jury, and the ones at least I've seen or heard that talked, explain, well, this is how we came to the guilty. And just like, to me, if I was on the jury, it would be impossible for me to convict someone if the only evidence you have is a bullet that was found that should have been found during the crime scene investigation initially, and then a confession of a man who was already showing signs of mental decline.
Right. The lovely Hio, she was able to get where a juror speaks, and we were listening to it one night in Discord, and the juror talks about, that they convicted on the fact that, well, these like the sheriff and the cops are basically giving us the story and they think he's guilty, so they're going to go with what the sheriffs and cops are saying and say that he's guilty as well, and then the bullet casing, and it's like, as a juror, I would be pissed to make a decision on this case and then later find out you didn't give me all the evidence, you know what I
Well,
mean?
Exactly.
no one might say this, but I'm very blunt and I'll say it. That juror was a fucking idiot. The dumbest
Oh no, you're
juror
right.
I've
You're
ever
right.
heard from in the history of my life. I'm 37 years old. Holy shit.
You're all right.
Holy shit. Because
Yeah.
the one piece of physical evidence, like Baz was just saying, that might actually tie him to the thing, even that juror said, yeah, I didn't hold much weight in that. Okay, so then what the hell did you hold weight in?
The
And
band.
she literally said that, well, like, he said he was wearing the same clothes as Bridge Guy was wearing. So if he's wearing the same clothes as Bridge Guy, then he's Bridge Guy. And if he's Bridge Guy, he's like the killer.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And then
She was so airheaded.
she went on about she wanted to be in I guess a lawyer or something like that. I'm like, oh God, I can only imagine.
Yeah, I think she needs to switch her dreams around there, because yeah, she definitely wasn't. She talked about the lunch and what people were wearing more than anything. It was irritating.
And I find it very peculiar that it was 8. So they were 9 guilty, 3 undecided. Then it became 8 guilty, 4 undecided. And then within some hours, it became 12-0.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yep. Absolutely.
What? Wow.
And it, I mean, it seems to me like somebody maybe coerced some people to change their decision.
Yeah, it does sound like it. I was gonna say, do anyone want to give out like their personal theory of what possibly could have happened? Because I have a few on my head, or at least one or two.
What do you think happened?
So I do believe that is it Keegan Klein or whatever his name was again?
Yeah, Keegan Clyde.
Chubby, yeah. I do believe that he and probably several others were involved in either procuring or attempted procuring young girls. And I mean, it could have been any kind of child, but I think it was just specifically young girls. And I do go with the oldest theory that there was a group of people who clearly have some weird sexual or religious, so-called religious ideals.
Uh-huh.
And because Klein was like messaging, was it Libby or Abby for a while? I forgot which one he was messaging.
Libby.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, with the Anthony Shots profile, and that's who they think they were there to meet, and he was the one behind the Anthony Shots profile.
So I personally think that he was involved with either a group of men in that area or possibly parts of God, I keep getting the state mixed up. I keep thinking it's Idaho. It's Indiana.
Yeah.
And I believe it was just like a what's what's that famous case? Oh God, I'm sorry, I'm brain farting. It's a very famous conspiracy case about Bill Clinton, and it involves like child predator ring. Someone's gonna chat.
Oh, Jeffrey Epstein, that dude?
Lolita Express?
It relates to the boys on the track. Someone's gonna know that case I'm talking about. Yes.
Well, no, I know about the boys on the track, and I want to talk about it, but that's a big conspiracy theory. But I can tell you, like, a quick breakdown of that was Bill Clinton was having cocaine delivered to Alma, Arkansas. The boys saw a delivery and were put on the tracks, and like the medical examiner said basically that they smoked a joint and laid on the tracks and were so
Right.
And then he said that the dog ate somebody's head and threw it back up. Like, it's just, that case is absolutely nuts. But
so it kind of relates to that, where it's this small town, bizarre, underseated, like a criminal world. And I think, unfortunately, the girls were lured there by Klein. And then, it was either, I can't say how many individuals involved, but it was definitely more than one person that took the girls, because I remember in the trial they're saying how the image of supposedly Richard initially popped up. It was way distance away from the bridge compared to where the girls were, and then I can't remember for sure in the trial did they say when the image of the man that was actually close by was there, but I always thought that there was someone else on the opposite side that was either closer towards the girls, and then the other individual is the one they see coming up further behind them. And I believe that voice, girls down here, wasn't him, but someone closer by, or at least in
Yeah,
front of them.
because
agree.
his lips don't move. Yep.
And
Mhm.
that guy was so far away, whoever bridge guy is. In that video, I just read this yesterday that that whole narrative that Libby was filming him specifically because they were fearing that this strange man was coming upon them is not even true. She was filming Abby, and it was like very casual, that there was no suggestion that they were actually creeped out by this oncoming man, and that he was too far away. And the
Right.
only reason they even got the image of him was because he was like a little blob in the far distance, and they just zoomed in with all their stuff.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. That's what I've told other
Yep.
people, because people were like, "Oh, they filmed him coming up closer towards." Like, no, that from what the description. I'm trying to remember the part during
They
the
had,
trial with it. Mhm.
yeah, they had to use AI to even get the like the
Right.
image of the person, and it's it's insane.
Right. But I think that it's possible that whoever that was maybe was involved. I feel like maybe someone came from the south side, got the girls, and then the other dude was like reinforcement to come and block the girls from running in the other direction.
I can see that too.
Who knows though? Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I never bought the prosecution or the state's theory that it was one person could commit that type of murder. Where it, to me, from what when they did find the bodies, it sounds like they were taken somewhere and then were placed, in their final spot where they were found. That's how I've always felt. It just seemed kind of obvious like that, but the
Yep.
prosecution with the idea that he was able to commit the murders. What was it? Less than an hour, 2 hours at minimum, something like that.
Yeah, in the afternoon when people are on the trail, they search the area where the girls were found that night. They stop for the night, come back in the morning, and all of a sudden they're there.
Yes. Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
Edith. It's crazy.
Mhm.
I'm super excited now that the gag order's been lifted, though, to hear them speak. I haven't heard
I
these.
agree.
I heard one, and we're gonna, like I said, we'll go over that one Saturday. But I haven't heard these two. So the main thing about this is the gag order's been lifted, so they can speak candidly, and I'm excited to hear what they have to say. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on what happened, though, because I'm interested in that too. I want to know what everybody thinks happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going to be ferreted out through the Court of Appeals, and I don't really want to, certainly Jennifer and I have our opinions on that, and I think, I think read the Franks memo, read it, and that provides some of it. After the Franks memo was filed, there's a lot of other stuff that happened, a lot of other things that we found, a lot of other deposition testimony.
Are you and your client still?
It's not letting me put closed captions up, so I do apologize about that.
Under Judge Gull's thumb?
I believe we're still counsel of record. The Carroll County rules say that our representative capacity is terminated as of the date of sentencing or final disposition in the case. So, but once our representation is finished and the appellate attorneys officially take over, we're bound by the rules of ethics, but there are no court orders binding us at that point.
Why did it take the jury 19 and a half hours to come to a verdict?
I have no idea. I mean, we've been waiting. Normally, by now, somebody would have come out and at least explained some of the process that happened in the jury room. But, it's their absolute right to not say anything, and I respect that. We as lawyers would like to know what they hung their hat on, and especially in light of the fact that we are very hopeful that there's going to be a second trial. I mean, I think we've done a lot of post-mortem work in our.
So they referenced the bullet, but if I remember correctly, just hearing the one talk, it was more so the white van thing that they mentioned. And the thing about that was that the fangirl psychiatrist might have put that in Richard Allen's head, and that might not have even been something that happened. I think she's the one who talked to him about the white van.
Correct. And unfortunately, these jurors had no idea about what was going on social media. They had no way to know that this van had been discussed for years.
Yeah.
In our own individual minds over the last 6 weeks. It's very emotional, very tough stuff to kind of go through. What could we have done better? What could we have done differently? And there's a lot of that going on. And I have an idea of what we could do differently. I mean, as a general principle, kind of a big picture principle that would require me to get into the weeds. But having said that, I have no idea why the jury took that long.
A quick verdict in a couple hours, which I'm accustomed to in Marion County, usually means this is a slam dunk case. Prosecution did this, so I can look at that and I go, well, prosecution said A, B, C, D. Okay, well, I can see why the jury went there. Something that takes 19 and a half hours to get to, considering that you also stood in the back of the courtroom and watched the video that they called on a Saturday that they wanted to keep watching. So there must have been a minefield of evidence or non-evidence that they had to transverse to get to a verdict after 19 and a half hours.
Kara said, wasn't it also alleged that Richard Allen was getting threats from Odinist guards that if he doesn't confess, they're going to hurt his family? That was alleged.
Yeah.
I can't say it to be true because I wasn't there, but I believe that he was.
Yeah, none of us would know, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait, stop.
We would love to talk to jurors. We're not angry with anyone. Andy is a fantastic attorney and so interested in the craft, and we would love to talk to jurors about, how they thought of us, what they thought of the evidence. To be better lawyers, if not to necessarily, unpack all of the facts, whatever they wanted to say to us, we would be happy to sit down and listen confidentially.
What was it that the jurors were limited to knowing, and then what did they think of your client?
And again, we just don't know. I know Doug Carter said that. I didn't watch the press conference, but people would send me clips of it, and it seemed very bizarre. There's also people on WIBC that Doug could have watched that had a completely different opinion on different shows, from what I understand as well. So, everybody, this is a very polarizing case, but I've never seen one where after the verdict is reached, there is still, to this very moment in time, so much questioning of whether it's the correct verdict out there. I mean,
That's a very good point.
Within a family.
Yeah, there's so many people torn on this verdict,
Right.
and this
And
case.
like, not even just the people like me and you guys, like the people that are so dead set that this man is guilty will not shut the fuck up. Excuse me. Will not shut up. Like if you're so certain that this man is your guy, then leave it. What are you doing? Why are you still harassing everyone that wants to fight for this man's retrial? Just
Right.
drop it.
At the very least, a retrial. Yeah.
Yep.
And they're all like, well, it's never going to happen. Then shut up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's just so much. Yeah, I agree 100%. Kara said, you can hear Rick say something at the end of one of the phone calls. And he says, like, you can hear him say, was that okay? And he's like, in those phone calls, he's like, I need to confess. I need to get this off my chest. Like, I don't know. The phone calls are weird. I can tell that he's under psychological distress in a lot of them. He's not himself.
They said, I was gonna say, they said, I know, I think it was like either towards like the later part of the trial. They played one of the tapes where phone calls where he sounded like almost like a zombie. It was just like, oh,
Yep.
okay. I think it was when he was talking to his wife, and she, she was like trying to tell him like everything's gonna be okay, Richard. You didn't kill the girls, and he's like, I don't know. I think I did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And
I want to point out too, I believe it was Heather just mentioned that she thought perhaps he was acting that way to like get off like playing an insanity thing.
mhm.
I think it's important to note that the testimony from the state, their own doctors even came back and said during trial that he was going through psychosis. They even walked back how they said like, oh, he's just, because for a while they were acting like, oh, he's just putting it on, but then they
Mhm.
got these people to say, well, yeah, he does look and appear to be in psychosis, and they were also shooting him up with Holodomor. You don't
Exactly.
shoot up
Right.
a fake psycho with Holodomor. You just don't.
Well,
Multiple times.
right.
Mhm.
Halidol is a hell of a drug. I'll tell you a story in just a second about that. But the thing for me, because people, if they're fighting for their life and they're gonna try to plead insanity, right? Like they'll go to extremes, right? Because you're gonna if you're facing death or life in prison and you want to try to convince somebody that you didn't do something that you actually did and you want to go with an insanity plea, like you're gonna take it to the brink of what you can possibly handle. The issue for me is eating his own feces, and the doctors did say that he was in psychosis. But like if you're faking, I don't care how good of an actor you are, there's no
Mhm.
way you could eat
So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Enough said right there.
Uh-huh.
And they did show video of that in court.
Right.
Halidol, I was having I was going through some things a long time ago in my life, and I had to go to the hospital, and they gave me Halidol at the hospital, and it worked really well for me there. And I said, can I take some of that home? Because I felt a lot better when I took it. And they said, well, we don't usually let people take this home, but I can give you the lowest dose possible, and yeah, I'll write you a prescription for it. So I got it filled. I took one when I got home, the lowest dose possible, and I could not get out of my bed for 3 days. Like I couldn't even get up to use the
Wow.
restroom. And I flushed that when I was able to regain my senses. I flushed that shit down the toilet and I said, "Whoa, never again." And that was the lowest dose possible. And they're shooting this man up with it. Um, and Doug
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. And Doug Carter with the Florida fires, if you guys haven't looked into that, that's another one you should look into because that is another travesty that happened there in Delphi that he's hidden some things on, in my
I
opinion.
I need to look in. Yeah, those are the little black girls that got killed in a mysterious fire.
Yes.
That
Okay.
Patrick Westfall happened to live nearby or some shit at the
Okay.
time.
Yeah, we did a live on the Florida fires and we talked about a lot of that. There's some really suspicious things and there's things that happened afterwards too that I didn't even get to get into yet. I hope to one day, but there's some sad things going on.
Mm, 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 mm.
Okay.
Family structure, if there's somebody that's accused of a drug case or something and they're convicted and the family can get all up in arms about it. No, this happened and that happened. But we're talking about worldwide, attention to this case. And worldwide, there's lots of people that just don't believe that they got the right guy. And that just never
Mhm.
happens. It's very weird, very bizarre.
Accurate. Hey
Yeah.
Trixie, good to see you, love. You're not late. You got here right when you're supposed to be here. And hey,
I
Neat
know
Smoothies.
I know we just hit play. I just want to say something too really Okay, never mind. Continue. I lost my thought.
It's all good.
Okay, well let me know if you regain it. Sorry, Bazard, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, I said it was all good.
Oh, okay.
Did you believe with the case you put on that you did enough to prove he was not guilty, that the state didn't prove him guilty, or that he was innocent?
I don't think we need to go to innocence. I believe in my client's
Hey,
innocence.
Pam.
I believe in Rick Allen's innocence. I don't think there's any way. I mean, obviously, the 12 people on the jury felt otherwise. But they only had one person to point the finger at. But I think that there was a lot of reasonable doubt. But
Mhm.
you've got a jury, you have 2 young girls who were violently murdered, and the jury wants to convict someone. They want to feel like they've done their job. And the only person they can point a finger at in this situation is Rick Allen.
Did Rick Allen talk himself into this conviction because he just kept talking even after he was told, quit talking? His family told him. The cops told him, you guys came on after the fact. But even then, you were his attorneys. And he's talking in prison. Did Rick Allen talk himself into this conviction?
You mean after he was taken to Westville without a hearing? After he was taken to Westville without an attorney? After he was taken to Westville without any evidence that the safekeeping statute elements were met? You mean then?
Well, he started talking himself into it.
So you could hear him just get frustrated about
Yep.
Westville and the way Allen was treated. I like
That
that.
safekeeping hearing was done without a lawyer present. I don't know how that doesn't throw this whole thing out. I don't get it.
And it
Yeah, so
has
I
to-
don't know much about that.
Oh no, I'll let you
Go
you
ahead,
go
Bazard.
first. No, I was just gonna say, it just still baffles me that I've never heard of a case, and like I mentioned not too long ago with the Madeleine Soto, Stinky's in jail in separation, I guess, right now. But how's that Richard Allen, who was allegedly, well, now quote unquote convicted of doing something similar to the young girls, deleting them, that he went to probably one of the worst prisons in Indiana, at least in that area,
Mhm.
because of safety concerns? I've
Right.
never heard of that before.
Right.
And
Look at. Go ahead.
oh yeah, I was just I have never heard of a case like that of a alleged child killer being sent to like one of the worst prisons in whatever city or state or county, and not and not be sent to at least jail and separated.
Right.
Yeah,
And there's
usually
so many examples of that never happening. Look at, well, Brian Koberger didn't necessarily kill children, so it's a little different, but I
Right.
mean, he's been fine and he's more widely known than Richard Allen.
Exactly.
Yeah, usually you stay in county for a while and then you would go to prison. I I've set out used to live a very different lifestyle, and I've gotten in trouble in the past, and I would be when I only ever went to county. I never committed a felony, but there would be girls in there that had been there for 2 and 3 years waiting to go to trial. It's really weird that they went ahead and sent him to prison before the trial even happened. I've never heard of that either.
Most bizarre thing.
Yeah.
Have they really honestly explained that? Because I always heard it was like, oh, safety concerns. But I guess other people brought it to the state, like, and to the judge, like, I'm assuming from his lawyers, why would you put him in a prison, like I said, known for how many firing of guards and other issues going on? And it just baffles me that no one that at least believes that he is guilty thought that was a strange circumstance to do for any particular alleged non-convicted criminal.
Yeah, Shaboogies, what do you know anything about, like y'all were saying, without an attorney? I was not aware that he had to have an attorney to say that needed to happen. Do you know more about that?
I don't know the legality necessarily of it, but I think in any situation where you're making decisions like that, the man needs to be represented. I don't know the actual by the book fucking rules, and it's Indiana, but from what I'm hearing, that's not a thing anywhere.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
But
All right.
the state was able to get him transferred without any evidence in this hearing. It was just the state like, oh, we think he needs to go there, and Gold saying, yeah, I agree, essentially.
Wow. Okay. Cara said a few minutes ago, after the conviction, there shouldn't be hundreds of thousands of people all over the world who believe he's innocent. And I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. That was what I was going to say earlier, too, is I've been getting a lot of flack, obviously, because as does anyone who wants to defend Richard Allen, because how could you defend a double child killer and, oh, you're just a groupie. I don't go around defending suspected murderers. I don't think Brian Koberger is innocent by any means. And I think
Right.
the only times I've done so were Amanda Knox in the West Memphis 3. Like, this is just such a pure case of like blatant cover up and misconduct. I don't see how anyone with a brain could not walk away from this thinking, what the hell is going on?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and I like to know, like, I like to hear why people think he's guilty and know what you're seeing that I'm not, you know what I mean? But I haven't seen anything that makes me say, well, I could understand why you think he's guilty. Like, nobody's brought to me enough evidence that I couldn't say, well, what about this or what about this, and make me think that he's guilty or they're accurate in their thinking of that, you know?
Right. I mean, because like I always say, the only thing they have is the confessions of him after being in solitary in a shitty prison, a corrupt, shitty prison for months on end. That's it. Where he even admitted that he killed his grandmother or other relatives. He molested his daughter, who said that never happened.
He said he killed his grandchildren. He doesn't even have
Right,
grandchildren. Yeah.
right. And the bullet, that, to me, just like that, those are going to be the two most well, at least at the bullet situation. How are you going to find that? Like I said, days or weeks later from the initial crime scene investigation under a pile of leaves, you know? So,
Yeah, and they were comparing a spent round to an unspent round, which even the
oh,
news said
yes.
that's like comparing apples to oranges. It doesn't even make sense.
Need some Z's just answer that question kind of better for us because I was all conjubbled. But Kathy Allen had hired a lawyer for him, but she wasn't allowed to communicate with Rick for him to have representation there. So he did have one, but she wasn't able to communicate with him and able to get the attorney there to represent him at the hearing.
Wow. See, why not? Like, if he had an attorney, they're supposed to legally make sure that that attorney is there if he had representation.
Correct.
So again, it's just why, like, it's weird. I don't even think it's
It
legal.
is. It's the most bizarre thing ever. Unless, well, then it goes into, if you believe the theory that, you know, at least with the oldest situation, that it was a small town group of individuals that have power or influence that just want to have a patsy, and it looks like Richard Allen's the patsy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Need some Z's said, I wouldn't care who was the person arrested in the case. With these facts and the case that the state put on, in my opinion, no one should be convicted. Right.
Yeah.
And that's I think where a lot of us are at with this, like with the evidence that you have, and on top of that, the fact that you're not even letting all the evidence you have be presented to the jury. I can't convict this man and say he's guilty. Like I said in the beginning, if you gave the jury all of the evidence and they still said he was guilty, I might not agree, but I wouldn't be out here fighting it as much as I am. I would say, okay, well, they were presented all the evidence. They found him guilty. Oh, okay, I'm going to back off the case, even though I don't agree. But like, you can't expect somebody to make an informed decision without all the information.
Sometimes I think here, at least in America, we've had so many publicized and sensationalized murder trials or cases where, I mean, a good example, you go with OJ, where I do believe that he clearly was involved in that situation.
Right.
You
Not
know, I
OJ.
think I didn't kill Nicole. Don't want to make a joke about that. But anyway, but yeah, I already did. It's like, well, I don't want to do a voice of OJ. But anyway,
That was great.
but yeah, it's like, I think because of here in the States, at least, with so many trials like that, it's come down to where people become tribalized. You know, and for me, like, I'll pay attention to certain trials here and there, but half the time, the case is done. I do believe that person is guilty, and then there's very few ones like with Richard, where it was like there's so much weirdness, a lot to it, and I think, like I said, I rather have a retrial, and if he's found not guilty, he's found not guilty because of the state's lack of evidence, which they pretty much already had anyway. So I think that's what the reason is why some people are so diehard on he's clearly guilty, even if we say the weird stuff that was going on, or the defense made it up, or this, that, or you're a groupie. You know, that's the excuses I'm going to hear. And
Yeah.
you know, unfortunately, that's going to be, unless things change, you know, it's going to be what's going to continue on.
That's funny because someone called me a Richard Allen groupie earlier today.
That's
Oh, Lord.
stupid. That's just stupid.
It is. And a lot of people will cite the confessions he made, and I'm like, I guess I could give you that, but I just can't. I mean, it's like they were under duress, and you can tell the man was not psychologically coherent. And if you take into account they moved him to a prison where supposedly the guards were trying to convince him to confess, then that's my thought on it. But at the same time, somebody who thinks he's guilty could say that's all just conspiracy theory, and it could be,
Mhm.
I guess, to be fair. But he really was in psychosis, so I don't know. I don't know. It's a hard situation.
It is. And then it comes down to, yes, we all clearly want justice for Libby and Abby. I mean, I hate hearing things about children
Yeah.
being murdered or assaulted, and I want justice for them. It's just I'd rather have it to where it's the exact right person.
Right. There's no question.
Mhm.
Um, and it sucks because a lot of us, including myself, feel like now we have 3 victims instead of 2, and there's somebody running around out here that committed the murder of these girls, and they're looking down from heaven trying to tell people that no, that's not the right person. It's just it's sad. Neeson Z said because they didn't want him to have representation there because, in my opinion, they needed him to go to Westville to get him to confess on tape. And that's my thing with the confessions, going back to that, because I really feel like it was all planned.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Jerry Holtman, to his credit, I guess, maybe, I feel like he just got a hard on for Richard Allen, and that was the problem.
Oh yeah.
He said, "You're my dude, and I'm gonna freaking prove it," and then he was just dead set on that shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And that's happened a lot in other famous cases. They believe that's the person yeah.
Yep. West Memphis 3 is close to my heart. That was one of the cases that got me into this. That's a horrible
Same
case.
here. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's my number one.
Well,
They're
so-
testing this month. They're testing.
I was gonna say.
I just said, yeah, I saw that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, sweetheart.
Oh, no, it's all good. I was gonna say, with that case, I've been over the years obsessed because I'm a '90s kid, and I actually kind of do remember, at least when I was a kid, the initial trials with the 3 young men at the time. So, and I was going to bring up that in that case, I guess it's going to be conspiracy talking on my end, but there's always just been these cases where they find children to have been murdered in some ritualistic sexual way. And in the Memphis 3, one of the boys had his, I hate to say it, but he had a tip of his penis cut off, or a portion of it cut off, for what I heard.
Scrotum.
Okay.
But they said later that there was alligator gar or alligator turtles.
It was snapping turtles.
Yeah, and that might have happened when they were in the creek. Now, that's fine for me. I still think it could have been taken off and mutilated, but I think it was his whole area.
Yeah, I personally think that was wildlife.
Okay.
That's the thing. I think these 2 cases are so similar in so many ways. West Memphis 3 and Delphi, just children murdered, and also the state trying to make it look like it was some sexual crime when it was clearly not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, yeah. I think. Well, in either case, it's I think it's strong, in my opinion, like I say, conspiracy stuff, that there's definitely something to me where several murder cases of children over the years where it just seems to be some ritualistic thing to it. Now that you can go anywhere with that if you want to, but or rabbit hole in that. But that's how I've always kind of felt, why I was so invested in this case, and of course, the Memphis 3, like you were mentioning.
Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of similarities. I think we did a live on that too, talking about the similarities between the 2.
Oh, wow.
When he was with Jerry Holman at the state police post in Lafayette, he started talking himself into it when he was sitting with,
I disagree with that. I mean, I watched, we wanted the jury to see October 13th interview and October 26th interview. So anybody that watched that, I would think would say, wow, that I don't know what an innocent man is supposed to look like, but I'm going to tell you, in 30 years of doing this and seeing all kinds of confession, that was by far, I was very happy that he talked to Jerry Holman, because, you know, anybody that watches that, anybody that sees it, I hope that it can come out. I don't know what the status of that is. I mean, people are asking us, well, you know, the Franks memo had all these exhibits. Are those confidential or released? What about all the videotapes? We'd like to see those. We'd like to air those. And I have no idea. I mean, you know, sadly, I just don't know how you guys can get access to that. But I think if anybody watched that, I don't think he was talking himself. Rick Allen, was talking into committing this crime. It was quite the opposite, actually. Until he was
I
taken
would
to
say I don't think the
They're
state
two
should
very different
show that.
statements or themes of statements.
Sorry, love. What were you saying?
Yeah, I was to say I don't think the state or Judge Gall or the powers that be in that area in town are going to allow those videos to be released. I mean, you can say people to FOIA it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to come out, because then it would show what the defense was saying and what a lot of the people have been saying, that, like, I remember in the trial, he vehemently was denying that he had anything involved with the murders of the girls, and was getting visibly angry with the authorities that were interviewing him.
Yep. Yeah, I'm hoping that they will release it, but they're probably going to cite some statute and say they can't. I get that a lot,
Right.
unfortunately. Yes.
I've been following a lot of people about that online on Twitter, because I'm on there all the time. And there's a couple people that have been sending in FOIA for this stuff. One in particular just created a document listing every single unsealed exhibit that should be public record, and why it should be public record. And we're just waiting to see what their excuse is for this one.
Okay, well, let me know. Keep me updated on that.
Yeah. I just think they're not gonna they're just not gonna release it. Yeah.
They're gonna have to be sued. They're gonna have to be sued. Someone with money is gonna have to care enough to sue them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mary said, did he get a retrial? I do believe he did. I'm pretty sure. And they said a public defender had to defend him or something, if I remember correctly.
So this is me not being not acknowledging Elise with. Can you never really have your same defense lawyer? It has to be like someone else. If you were found guilty of a crime, I never heard of that, but this is me trying to figure that out.
I don't know. We'll look it up on Google in just a minute.
Okay, I can do that right quick. Let me see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll look it up too in just a second. Neesim Z said, in my opinion, I think Gold will seal everything either forever or as long as she possibly can. I'm expecting things to never be released. Me too. I saw a document where basically they're asking them to save evidence and preserve evidence, and that Judge Gold sent back a motion saying that it's not specific enough. And so the motion was denied. So basically they can destroy evidence, which was great. I was like, wow, really? Okay.
You have his statement on the 13th and the 26th, in which he repeatedly and vehemently denied all of the allegations, denied all of the lies told to him by Jerry Holman. Then he gets to Westville, where he is placed in solitary confinement. Under the Mandela rules of the UN, that is torture, to keep someone in solitary confinement against their will for more than 15 days. It is against the Indiana DOC policy, if you're there as a convicted person, to keep someone in solitary confinement for more than 30 days. So after he's placed in solitary confinement, denied any human contact, he's had a history of depression, he becomes psychotic, and, you know,
that was interesting to me because, like she said, you're not supposed to be in solitary confinement for more than 15 to 30 days because it can make you psychotic. And they kept him there for months.
Yep.
Months.
Like, what's the explanation for that?
They'll say for his safety from the other prisoners.
Right, but like I mean, you could house it like, okay, the other prisoners like that have hurt children or whatever are not kept in solitary confinement. They're kept in a cell or, alone possibly, but not like in solitary confinement. From what I'm gathering, they had him in the room that like has no bed. There's a drain in the floor. There's a sink in a toilet, and you're in the turtle suit, which is the green Velcro suit. No blanket, no pillow, no nothing. Like that's different than housing an inmate alone in a cell where there's a mattress, blanket, pillow, they have clothes on, they're dignified, So
Right.
I don't I can't understand that, or and they will, like you said, they'll say it was for his safety, but that's not safety.
Yeah.
Neeson Z said, not a retrial. He was assigned appeal lawyers. The appeal still needs to be filed. They are waiting on the record from the full trial now, and Gold can take as long as she wants to have that done. Thank
Yeah.
you, Neeson Z's.
Uh,
Jen of Eve, thank you for being here, said the actual murderer is deceased and he apparently was a well-protected individual. She's referencing, or that person's referencing Ron Logan, and a lot of people think he's guilty. Neeson Z says they said he wasn't a prisoner. He was there for safekeeping and the rules didn't apply to him. Oh, wow.
yeah, they just kept saying that the defense was interviewing or cross-examining the prison guards. They were saying stuff like that. Like, oh yeah, it was just for safety and everything's fine. He was fine.
Nothing
Yeah.
to see here.
Ridiculous.
Maybe people told him, I don't believe the police ever told him not to talk, but I'm sure people told him.
Yeah.
That's not saying don't talk.
Let's talk about that, Russ. Let's talk about the 2 minutes of missing video on the October 26th interrogation of Richard Allen from Jerry Holman, who his explanation, and so he claimed, Jerry did, that I reminded him of his Miranda rights from October the 13th, and I told him he was free to leave. Those are important topics, because if you're not saying that, then the whole statement can get tossed. Well, miraculously, that's missing, much like a lot of the other evidence. And what's so interesting is under oath in a deposition, his explanation, Jerry Holman's explanation for that was, well, it wasn't working. So I went outside and then we tinkered with it and then turned it on. And then we saw that it was working. And then I walked back in. What he didn't get, because, is the video doesn't start with him walking into the room. The video didn't start with him walking into the room. So they had no explanation for that at all. And that's by the way, that's kind of a small thing, but it's really indicative of a larger problem that happened in this case, that there's missing evidence all over.
So you mean to tell me that that Carter, I think he said, lied?
Holman.
Holman, yes, thank you. Lied? Yeah.
Holman's the biggest liar in this thing.
Yep.
You lied about that, and like you said, that's a small thing, but when you add that to all the other things, it all creates a bigger picture. So I asked, can a defendant keep the same attorney from trial for a retrial or appeal? They said yes, a defendant can generally keep the same attorney from their trial for a retrial or appeal, as they have the right to choose their own legal representation, including retaining the same lawyer who represented them at trial. However, there might be situations where a defendant may choose to switch attorneys depending on the specific circumstances of the case and their relationship with their previous counsel. Key points to consider is right to counsel. The right to legal representation includes the ability to choose your attorney, allowing a defendant to retain the same lawyer for retrial or appeal if they wish to do so. Strategic considerations, a defendant might choose to change lawyers if they feel their previous attorney did not adequately represent them at trial, or if the new legal strategy required for the appeal necessitates different expertise. And then conflict of interest. In some cases, a lawyer might have a conflict of interest that prevents them from representing the defendant at the retrial or appeal, which could lead to a need to find new counsel.
Which I think, and I found that too when I looked it up. I think Gall. I have a feeling that if they try to get back as his lawyers, that Gall will somehow get involved.
Probably.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They already have Mark Lehman and another woman. I forget her name. Someone correct me in chat, but
Okay.
they're very good. And Mark Lehman is who actually got Brad Rosie and Baldwin back as his lawyers.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome.
Very, very good two appellate attorneys.
Now,
Awesome.
does it look like Gall will probably be back involved if they do a retrial, or be a different judge?
She already signed the okay for them to be his appellate lawyers.
Okay.
So I think they tried to get her off the case. I doubt she will. I think she'll stay on.
Yeah, she has a hard
he-
on for Richard.
Yeah, she does. It's and there's so many conflicts of interest with her being the judge. It's just insane. Hey, Toxic and Indie Girl.
I'm told that in an appeal process, if it were to be a new trial, or I don't know if it's when they actually file the appeal or if they actually get a retrial, but Gull would not be the judge in one of those situations.
I hope so.
She'll find a way. She'll be like, I have to. Why? Because it's Richard Allen.
Literally.
Yeah. Neesom Z said appeal lawyers are different from trial lawyers. Thank you for that. Cara said Gull needs to be removed. Neesom Z said Bradley and Rosie want to remain as his trial lawyers if Richard wins his appeal. Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay. I hope. I really do hope.
Okay, yeah.
I hope so too. And thank you, Shaboogies, for your explanation as well.
The place, and it's not just missing it's missing evidence of the things that of the third party suspect evidence. It's always focused on that mock crime scene photo on somebody's social media page or Facebook page. Missing. Jerry Holman was the last guy that I know of to see it. Okay, now I've never heard an explanation given, nor an apology, nor like, man, that's really bad. We need to figure that out. They're not investigating where it is. I had to drive to Georgia with, two guys to locate this, what I would label as exculpatory evidence that is still to this day missing.
Did Richard Allen lose his mind because he was incarcerated and started confessing, or did he lose his mind because he felt guilt over what he allegedly had done?
Good question.
He lost his mind
Stupid.
because he was incarcerated in conditions that someone as a pretrial detainee who is innocent under our state constitution and our federal constitution at that point. He was incarcerated in conditions that no one should ever be incarcerated. And it wasn't.
So there's an answer for the people who cite his confessions. I mean, even the attorneys are saying that he lost his mind due to how he was being treated and housed and confessed. I still think he was coerced.
Until that. It wasn't until he was rubbing his feces on himself. It wasn't until he was eating his feces that he said anything remotely incriminating.
And it wasn't because he felt guilt over what he perhaps had done?
I don't think so.
Nobody in this world knew him better than Kathy Allen. Why didn't you call Kathy to the stand?
Well, those are the game time decisions that you make. We felt at the time that we had seen how the prosecution had treated some of the witnesses, and Kathy is a sweet lady. She's feisty and she fights for Rick hard and she supports him 100%. I don't think Rick would have wanted his wife up there subject to that. And we felt that we had, the state had not done enough to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And it was an unnecessary risk for her to get up there. I mean, juries can read into a wife like, that little facial expression. The daughter, they got up and his daughter got up and they did what they have to do as prosecutors, I suppose. And I just didn't want, I know Rick was upset by the daughter having to testify. I don't think he would have wanted Kathy to testify. Now that we lost the case and people would say, what would you do differently? We would have to reanalyze that. Maybe the jury will tell us if we ever get to talk to him, you should have put Kathy Allen on. These are the things that trial lawyers, this is what stinks about being trial lawyers is when you lose, you have to do this post-mortem. You have to look and analyze everything.
Hey, MI Passenger. Thank you for being here.
Should I have done that cross differently? Did I forget?
Hey, Robin.
Should I have added that? Did we focus on the wrong things? And that Kathy Allen, whether she should have testified or not, that'll be one of those things that we're going to think about.
Was there ever a plea deal in the works, offered, discussed?
No, not really. I mean, and it was one of those plead guilty as charged, and we'll drop one of the murder. There was something. I mean, it's some cases you just have to go to trial, and this was always one of those cases.
Because there were 4 counts.
We always knew that he couldn't be sentenced on 4 counts. So he can only be sentenced on 1 count for each girl. So dismissing 2 of the counts doesn't.
There was nothing like a set term a year offer or anything like that.
Yeah, he was. They tried to get him for 4 counts of murder on 2 girls. Like, it was ridiculous.
I never knew that until just listening to this part right now, that they tried to offer a deal where they would drop one of the counts as if they're stupid and they didn't already know that he can't be charged with 4. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, why even charge him with 4 to begin with? Like, it's just, yeah, a bunch of this is ridiculous. And it just shows that they thought that they could get away with charging him with 4 counts of murder. That's how like corrupt they were. They were so validated in their corruption that they thought they could get away with something like that. So that tells me all I need to know as far as the rest of the trial and corruption goes. You know what I mean? That makes sense.
Mhm.
Thomas said the only time he wasn't being recorded, and that's when he made those confessions, supposedly. Right. MI Passenger said R&M Productions, Criminality, and the Prof have amazing coverage of this case. I've seen the Prof a couple of times.
R&M is really good. She is really getting into it. I've really enjoyed her stuff.
Yeah, I need to check out some of their stuff. Hey, Stoic Dissension. Thank you for being here.
And it really doesn't matter because Rick was never going to take it anyway. So it wouldn't have mattered.
Why did you turn down an offer to do a polygraph before you got involved in the case? Holman says he was offered a polygraph and turned it down.
Well, here's the thing that my clients tell me when they're offered polygraphs and they don't take them. I have mental health issues. I'm nervous. And by the way, do you trust Jerry Holman? And do you trust the police? I mean, Jerry brought him over there on October 26th when he asked him for the polygraph under false pretenses. He went over there, Rick did, because they had held on to his car and he needed the car. So he went over there and, they were going to arrest him. They say that they weren't, but that's just outrageous. And so I wouldn't have trusted those guys for a polygraph for my life, especially if I have mental health, depression and stuff, and I have to worry about whether that's going to be a false positive or a false negative. So
important point here about lie detectors. They literally just released an article yesterday about a decades-old cold case, this woman named Esther Gonzalez, and they just solved her murder through genetic genealogy, and it turns out it was a guy they had given a polygraph test, and he had passed the test.
Wow.
So polygraph really has no business being used. And I noticed that they use it a lot in excluding suspects, and this just proves that cannot be a thing.
Right. Also, like, because I've been diagnosed with bipolar, technically I couldn't take a polygraph test because I would fail because I had an anxiety disorders, things like that, because you just get nervous anyway, and it like tracks your heart rate and your pulse and stuff, and those things are going to happen anyway. So you can't, and that's why they're not allowed in court anyway, too, as well.
Interrogated by an individual who tells me that a bullet from my gun is at the scene, and I know that neither I or my gun have ever been there. And he tells me that they have scientists who know that it's my voice on that video, and I know I'm not on the video. And they have scientists who say that that is me on the video, and I know I'm not on the video.
And those are lies, by the way.
Right,
No
those
scientists that said that. Yeah.
There's a string of lies that Jerry Holman said to Rick Allen on the 26th. If they can make up that evidence, how are they going to skew a polygraph?
If you're sitting on that jury, how do you get past hearing from Richard Allen? Every jury says, we want the guy to testify, and every defense attorney says, I'm not going to open up my guy for this. I'm assuming one reason there was no point in having him testify is they've already got all this video that they've watched and heard all these phone calls. If you're the jury, how do you get past, because remember, we're looking at this the way the jury looks at this, how do you get past, but the guy kept saying it?
The timeline was one way they could have gotten past that. I mean, Jennifer did a terrific job getting our expert, Stacey Eldridge was her name, the forensic phone expert, and she should talk more about that. But the story that the prosecution presented as to what the timeline was blown by the forensic data, which is, as we said, the data is the data is the data, and that's the forensic data showed that their story did not hold water.
The only time
I
Rick
want
said
to
anything
interject real
that was even
quick
remotely
here.
incriminating, the jury saw the videos.
The thing where I love his attorneys, I do, but I think where they really screwed up is their pushing of the timeline. This timeline that the state presented is impossible.
Yeah.
To me, it seems quite impossible. That one man did it. Maybe that timeline would work if there was two individuals, but there was
Right.
just Richard, according to them. And the phone thing is one little aspect of the timeline that can be, I guess, kind of scooted away if you do a 5-minute Google search. But the
Yeah.
things that cannot be, to me, and what I wish they had done, for example, is the USGS report on Deer Creek, the creek underneath the bridge where he supposedly crossed with Abby and Libby, was 3 to 4 times deeper than average. If you look at pictures of searchers, adult men near the embankment, the water comes up to their waist. Now, we're talking about a man who is 5'4", 5'5" on a good day,
Yeah.
200 pounds, okay? With Libby was about 5'4", and Abby was a little smaller, and he had a gun. And this water is not only deep, but sludgy, right?
Mhm.
Not real easy to just skip through. So you take one man with those two girls, and where's his gun? Is he holding the gun above his head as he pushes them through the water and says, go? It is not possible for one man to have controlled them both. One could scream, one could easily run the other way, make noise, something. And while
Yep.
they're doing this in the creek, no one notices.
Yeah, during a time period when there's a lot of people on the trail. Nobody heard anything, nobody saw anything, and people were on the bridge during the time period that it supposedly happened, able to see the area. Stop.
I really think that they should get 3 similar-sized individuals to that creek on a similar day and really test that theory of one man with a gun and these 2 girls getting through that water. Because
Yeah.
I'm guaranteeing if they had filmed that and shown that in trial, it would have showed how really unlikely that is.
Yep. Needs Some Z says this interviewer pisses me off, and I understand that. I like it though, because he's asking questions that that you would have as a juror, questions that people want to know. Let's say the people that think he is guilty, some of the things that they've said or done, that the reasons they believe, for instance, the what did he just say? He just referenced something that I've heard a lot. People say, well, he's guilty. Oh, let's take the confessions, for example. And so he's asking them specifically about the confessions and what their explanation is for the reasons that these people think he's guilty. So I think that's more of his intent, and I appreciate it. I like hearing the way he interviews, but I respect your opinion. I don't want you to feel like I'm picking on you. I was just trying to, kind of explain what I think and why he's asking those questions specifically. I have a few comments I'm going to read. Stoic Discussion said, hey to everybody. And just had to say that he was found guilty. When he was found guilty, I was so disturbed at how people could be so blind. They just destroyed this man in a horrible, unbelievable ways, in my opinion. And I agree.
True.
Mm-hmm. Kara said, me too. I was really upset about it. I'm hoping there is a separate investigation on Gull, the DA, the guards, etc. Me too. Needs Some Z says they could have focused on many things to make it more clear that Richard Allen is innocent. That's true. and a saw or chainsaw apparently as well. Rachel said, and that water had to have been moving fast. Yeah.
It was confirmed moving fast, actually, Rachel.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
deep, pretty deep as well. Like,
Yeah, you missed it. I went through how it was 3 to 4 times higher than average. Waist deep by an adult man near the embankment.
Yeah, so that means it would
So
have been up to Richard Allen's chest.
up to his chest, up to all their chests, and
Yeah.
he controlled them.
and yet, yes, and yet the girls were able to get across that river or mid lake
Yeah,
Right.
or river. Yeah, creek. I'm sorry, I'm brain farting.
You're good. Neesom Z says there was a man who was literally on the bridge taking pictures at the time this was happening. See, that's the kind of things that I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. Neesom Z said, yeah, for that reason, the interview is good. I do agree. It's just me personally. Oh, I got you. I got you, love. And then Rachel said, this isn't justice. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Thomas said the eyewitness said he was bloody and muddy. Wouldn't she be able to tell if he was soaking wet? Yeah. And they actually found out that the cops added bloody to that later.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, she said I think it was in trial, and she said that she said muddy. She never said bloody, and I think it like they said the cops added that afterwards or something. I could be wrong, so don't etch it in stone yet, but I'll have
I
to
think I remember.
And didn't I'm gonna call her Ditsy, the juror said that she didn't, or some of them didn't even care about her part of it as a witness. Like they didn't even think of her statement as anything
accurate.
important. Yeah, from what I remember hearing about her saying something like that.
I think widely she's thought to be a liar, like not even an actual witness.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know much about that one, but I could understand how they think that. Absolutely.
Because she said, I remember hearing in the trial that she said she was going at a pretty decent speed, and yet she was able to see, a guy coming out of the woods like that.
Yeah. Yep. Ridiculous. Yeah. Like Pam says, I pray that I'm never near a crime ever. Apparently I could go to prison. I mean, that's where a lot of people are with this. Like he went and tried to do the right thing by saying, hey, I was there, never thinking in 1,000 years, because you don't. If you're innocent, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go tell them that I was there and maybe I saw something and I could help them find the murderer of these 2 girls. And then you get a whole crime pinned on you and get put in prison for the rest of your life. Like,
yeah.
And the whole thing is like, why, if you were involved in a crime, would you go confess to the police? And the police were like, oh, he confessed to us because that was his thought process too. Like, why would they ever think I was guilty? I came and said I was there. And I mean, it's like, no, maybe he really was there and trying to help.
I feel like with past cases, because actual murderers or serial killers have sort of done things like that, where they'll, try to seem like they're innocent and say, "Oh yeah, I might have been there, but I didn't see anything or hear anything or commit anything." I guess authorities are so kind of used to it, or maybe complacent. I mean, you can kind of say with the Soto situation, that kind of is what they did to a degree, even though it was really shitty and bad and terrible. But I mean, with Allen's case, yeah, I've kind of at the point where, and not just him, but other cases where I will keep my mouth shut unless I really feel like I have to get involved.
Right.
Because I don't be used against me if they say, well, you were here at that time and circumstances fit you as possibly being the killer or whatever the crime was. So it's come to that point where I think a lot of people are going to be very wary of admitting anything or telling anything to authorities.
Yep. Absolutely.
Always get a lawyer, never talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Even if everyone thinks you're guilty, look at the Ramseys. Everyone thought they were guilty for not talking, but that's the only reason John Ramsey is not in prison right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to be the first to tell you, if you ever find yourself in the unfortunate situation of being interrogated, my advice is going to be not to even say your name without having an attorney. I know
Yep.
it makes you look guilty, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. Like if I'm not guilty, I would hope that you can't. I mean, Richard Allen is the exception to the rule, but I would hope that you can't pin something on me. I'd rather have an attorney there just to make sure that I'm not there. You ain't pinning shit on me that I didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mommy Ball. Mommy Ball said water test. Judge would not allow that. Would not allow that without it being done by an expert who must be approved to serve in that capacity. So many barriers to defending someone. I didn't know that. Thank you, Mommy Ball.
I wouldn't be surprised by that.
That's
I
interesting.
wouldn't.
So they wouldn't have had the money likely to get experts to do something like that. That makes sense. That is typically like something a prosecution would do, like testing in that way because they have all the money in the world.
Right.
Carr said allegedly happening. In my opinion, they were taken away and brought back after the search called off, and then the homicide was committed. And I've heard a theory that makes sense that there was several people involved. There was bridge guy, there was somebody behind them, and then somebody in a vehicle
Right.
down there in the driveway that took them somewhere. That's where the homicide happened. And then that night after search was called off, they were brought back and placed there. And that's about the most accurate thing I could come up with, although it
That's
hasn't been proven.
yeah. That's the same with me. There was more than one person involved in their murders, and I guess the prosecution in the state still and authorities are still not going to want to talk about the runes or the tree limbs if we ever going to bring that up, because that's, I hope in this interview that was brought up. Like
Me
that
too.
to me was the most fascinating thing with the runes or the tree limbs placed in particular shapes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other thing.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, Mob Crew does a good job of that. Maybe we can play some of that. I think it's in some of that video I referenced earlier. Some of that stuff. All right.
Of him, and the jury saw the videos of the conditions of his confinement when those statements were made. And to me, that throws a tremendous amount of doubt on anything Rick said during that time. And the other thing is, just as Andy said, the forensic data, if you believe the state's timeline, Libby's phone was under a shoe, under Abby's body from, let's say, 3:50, which is generous, 3:50 p.m. on February 13th until 12:15 p.m. on February 14th. You can't see, when you look at the crime scene pictures, I went back last night, you can't see that phone that is under Abby's body. So, and we know that wired headphones were plugged into the audio at 5:44 p.m. on the 13th and unplugged at 10:32 p.m. on the 13th. And the only explanation for that is some kind of human activity with the phone.
That was really interesting to me because we covered the trial, and when they brought that up, they said it could be water getting in the earphone port or something, but it doesn't make sense. Like it would, because it actually happened to my phone not too long ago. The phone would say that it's wet and you can't plug something in. For it to bring back data that a headphone, something was plugged into the headphone jack, something was plugged into the headphone jack. That was
Right.
really interesting at trial for me.
Well, this is where it's really complicated because technically water can cause that code, especially on the older iPhone models.
Really?
However, what complicates that is this was not like a random like audio in, audio out, and then again it coded. This was like an audio in, audio out, and then hours later
That's right. Yep.
Yep.
unplugged. So that's what makes it different than just we're getting a random audio in, out cord could be water damage. Well, when you take in the fact that it's hours in between, And the fact that there was a call that came in seconds before the initial audio in, that
Yep.
changes the game.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you for reminding us of all that, because I had forgotten about some of the details of that. Thank you for
Well,
that.
yeah, because I was going to say the prosecution was just saying, oh, it was just clearly the water that caused that. When it was like, well, wasn't it showing that basically it seemed like someone was still manipulating with the phone?
Yep.
Supposedly after the time frame that you said the girls were already dead and everything else.
Yep.
I have a wild theory.
Mhm.
I believe that BH Holder is like the main guy we need to look at this for.
Mhm.
And there on his Facebook, he had multiple check-ins, right? He was at work that day, supposedly until about 2:30. But the night prior, I believe he checked into the gym at 2 a.m. in Logansport. And then apparently he was at work later. And then he checked into that same gym again around 4:30-ish, 4:30 p.m. on the day they went missing. Now
Mhm.
these were manual check-ins, so you can't really say he was there for sure, but who has headphones? Maybe someone at a gym.
Right.
And if he had that phone in his possession and he was around anyone and a call came in, what you would put those headphones in.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
a possibility in my head.
No, that makes sense.
That
That
does
makes
make
sense.
sense. That's
And I
interesting.
kind of forgot about the holder situation. 'Cause that's another part that, of course, prosecution was saying that's nothing. Don't worry about it. Who cares? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Just found out that there is legitimately a photo. I knew they got a lot of stuff from Brad Holder's Facebook of really weird shit, but there was years prior to 2013, so it was years prior, but he had a photo of two girls with sticks and formations over their bodies. And Andy Baldwin just confirmed that he went and saw the actual photo and it exists and it was in fact on his Facebook. Tell me how that's just a coincidence that you have two girls with stick formations over their bodies on your Facebook years prior, combined with all the other runes and shit he had on his Facebook.
No, you don't
Yeah.
understand. It's
There's
Richard Allen. No one else.
But that's not a good enough evidence. Only an unspent bullet casing apparently is good enough evidence.
Look, you don't understand. In our small town, we have done everything we can to find the murderer, and we found him. So don't keep asking us questions.
You're so right.
yeah, exactly. Okay, I want to show y'all this video real quick that I made a while back. And it's going to show you some of these people that they're talking about. Brad Holder, Elvis Fields. We'll watch this real quick and then we'll get right back to the interview. Because this
Okay.
is one that's going to kind of explain that a little bit more for anybody that don't know. Some hold on just a minute. Hello. So I'm going to go over a document with you that the defense team for Richard Allen submitted to Judge Gull in the court to try to enter in evidence for the jury to see that the jury was not allowed to see. She ended up denying the motion. This motion is really interesting because it talks about third-party suspects. If you want this document, along with several other documents pertaining to several other cases, please visit As the Gavel Drops Discord, and you can find this document along with several others pertaining to several other cases. I will link them in the description box below. They are in the description box of this video. This video is under a playlist called Delphi on my page. I do show you pictures. I think it's in this one of the people I'm talking about. And I will grab their link and drop it in chat. I start this. I want to give you a very, very, very heavy trigger warning, because it's going to talk about some things that might be hard for some people to hear. If you are under the age of 18, please exit this video now. It is not meant for children. This motion was filed on October 30th, 2024 at 9:21 a.m. in the Carroll Circuit Court, Carroll County, Indiana. It states that the state of Indiana in the Carroll Circuit Court 1, County of Carroll, cause number, and it gives that, State of Indiana versus Richard Allen. It states, the accused second motion to admit evidence of Odinism, Norse paganism, and ritualistic unaliving, and also motion to admit evidence concerning Elvis Fields and Brad Holder as third-party suspects. Again, trigger warning. Unaliving. It states, comes now the accused, Richard Allen, by and through counsel, moves this court to admit certain evidence that this court thus far has prevented the defense from presenting to the jury. Pursuant to its September 4th, 2024 order granting the state of Indiana's April 29th, 2024 motion in limine. In support of said motion, the defense states the following. Number one, on October 23rd, 2024, the defense has previously filed his first, quote, motion to admit evidence of Odinism, Norse paganism, and ritualistic unaliving. 2. Since that motion was filed, additional evidence has been elicited through testimony and other evidence that further opened the door to the admission of Odinism, Norse paganism, and ritualistic unaliving. Number 3 states, also, since that October 23rd, 2024. So this is going to mention other parties and give you, show you who Brad Holder, Elvis Fields are, and all of that, and explain why they could be possibly, they could be the ones who did this. It's going to go into that, and I'll show pictures of them in this video. So just stick with me for a minute. Before motion was filed, additional evidence has been elicited through testimony and other evidence that opened the door for the defense to bring in evidence that third-party suspects, Elvis Fields and Brad Holder, were involved in the unaliving of the victims. Now, this is going to go on to state additional evidence admitted during the trial that supports introduction of Odinism, Norse paganism, and ritualistic unaliving evidence. 4. On Wednesday, October 24, 2024, forensic pathologist Core testified that, and we are at the end of page 1, there is a total of 10. A, possibly 2, possibly 3, possibly 4 instruments were used to cut the necks of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. B, that in his autopsy report, Dr. Core believed that some cuts may have involved the use of a serrated instrument, and other cuts may have involved the use of a non-serrated instrument, providing the possibility that more than one person was involved in the unalivings. During his testimony, Dr. Core backtracked somewhat, but still did not exclude the possibility that the injuries to Abigail Williams and Liberty German were caused by both serrated and non-serrated instruments. Number 5 states, also, since the trial began, the prosecution admitted certain crime scene photographs into evidence, including photographs of the crime scene in which the sticks on the girls were clearly visible to the jury, allowing the defense to ask questions concerning the sticks on the girls. 6. Any competent trial lawyer would ask a variety of questions concerning the unusual way that the sticks. Okay, so this is how the sticks were laid. This is from the mob crew. Now, they're laid out in the form of runes, and I can show you some of those. They're shown in this video, and in this video goes through some pictures and just some more evidence showing you guys kind of what some of the things they're talking about. This is how they found the bodies with the sticks laid over them, and they said that it was done to conceal the bodies, and you're not going to place, what is it, 1, 2 sticks, 3 sticks over a body to conceal it. That's not concealment. That's something else.
And I was going to say this, when I saw this, when it initially got talked about, it brought back Black Dahlia vibes to me, how that was clearly, in her case, was posed, and yet somehow this prosecution was able to convince the jury that was not a pose. It was just a failed attempt at hiding the bodies.
Yep.
The way Abby's leg is crossed over, the way Libby's one arm is raised up, especially Abby, that looks like a holy, like a glow, like an angelic sort of situation with the way the limbs are placed. How did that not convince the jury that is the most bizarre thing, and they didn't want to talk about that?
Yeah, I don't know how you see those crime scene photos and say, oh yeah, he was just throwing some sticks on him to cover him up. Bull.
Yeah.
How?
It's ridiculous. It really is. I don't understand that either. I've seen the photos, unfortunately, and no.
And in an hour time, after you control 2 girls, when all 5'4" of you through a sludgy creek, do you then take the time to put sticks in weird formations on their bodies and do all that fun stuff all within an hour, and you're already heading back home?
Right.
Yeah. And there's people there that could have heard everything. They said that they could hear squirrels and birds in the leaves, but they didn't hear this. Stop it. Sticks were placed on the victims, and it would be ineffective for the trial lawyer not to ask questions concerning the sticks placed on the victims.
7. On Saturday, October 25th, 2024, Lieutenant Jerry Holman from the Indiana State Police testified to the following.
I don't know what's it.
A. On cross-examination, Lieutenant Holman testified that it was his belief that those sticks/branches found on the girls were used by the unaliver to conceal the bodies. B. On redirect, Prosecutor McClelland asked Lieutenant Holman if another reason that the sticks or branches were found on the girls was something called an, quote, undoing. Lieutenant Holman responded, quote, yes. 8 states through Dr. Core's testimony, it was determined that it is feasible that multiple people using multiple knives supporting the defense theory that Odinist Norse paganists were involved in the unalivings. 9. As Dr. Perlmutter testified on August 1st, 2024, knives are a classic sign of Odinism, Norse paganism culture, and that knives are classically used in ritualistic unalivings. 10. Dr. Core's testimony revealed that perhaps as many as 4 knives were used, and at least one of those knives may have been serrated, supporting the defense belief that multiple Norse pagan/Odinist using multiple knives were involved in the unalivings. Furthermore, upon reviewing the crime scene photographs that have been admitted into evidence, there are no obvious drag marks to the naked eye, nor were there any police reports or charts that showed drag marks at the crime scene. Even blood spatter expert Pat Ceriso admitted that he could observe no drag marks on the crime scene photographs that he reviewed. 12. The fact that there is no evidence of drag marks supports that more than one person was involved in the unalivings, including 2 or more people needed to lift Liberty German's body, explaining why there was no drag marks, from where she was unalived to where she was ultimately found, supporting the possibility that multiple Norse paganists/Odinists were present and participating in the unalivings. As it relates to Lieutenant Holman's testimony, when Lieutenant Holman answered, quote, yes, when asked if another theory of why the sticks were on the bodies was because of something called a, quote, undoing, his testimony is yet another reason provided by the state of Indiana as to why the sticks are on the girls. 14. The questioning of the prosecution and the answer of Lieutenant Holman pertain to yet another explanation, and in parentheses it says, and, quote, undoing, as to why the sticks were found on the girls, and therefore the prosecution opened the door to the defense's alternative theory as to why the sticks were found on the girls. 15. The defense has its own theory as to why the sticks are on the girls, and Richard Allen has a Sixth Amendment.
I apologize that this video, the editing wasn't done real good, but I don't know why it skips so much. But what you just saw there was how they showed that it could be tarot cards. I tried to take it back. Hold on. I'm trying to pull that up. I don't know why it's not pulling it up. I'll try to grab it.
Were found on the girls, and therefore the prosecution opened the door to the defense's alternative theory as to why the sticks were found on the girls. 15. The defense has its own.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, you saw there, because it won't take it back, how the it could be the Hanged Man, and I think it was something else, the Magician, are also, that's been a possibility too, that they could be laid out in the form of tarot cards, although I believe it's more than likely runes. And I show a picture of that here as well.
I agree.
Same.
Alternative theory as to why the sticks were found on the girls. 15. The defense has its own theory as to why the sticks are on the girls, and Richard Allen has a Sixth Amendment right to provide that theory to rebut the state of Indiana's theories, including the prosecution's latest theories that the sticks are related to an, quote, undoing. 16. Additionally, blood spatter expert Pat Ceriso opened or the prosecution led the jury to believe through questioning that Liberty German was moved to her final resting place to conceal the body. The prosecution's line of questioning of Pat Ceriso was pursued by the prosecution on direct examination and opened the door to the defense offering the alternative theories as to why the body was placed in its final resting place.
Hey, it's Boozy Baby. Thank you for being here. It's Boozy Baby says, as a lifelong Indiana resident, I'm ashamed of what has been done to Richard Allen. That torture inflicted to gain his confession was heinous. I agree. Bad Girl said, Libby weighed more than Richard Allen, not talking dead weight too. No shade, but how could he move her alone without dragging her? Right. It doesn't even make it like.
I was like, yeah, I was just making a joke, but the prosecution, they'll have a way. They'll find an excuse.
And also, they were turned when their throats were cut. They were laid on their side, or one of the girls was, at least, I believe, Libby. See how well, I don't know if you've seen the photo, but in the photo, the blood kind of pours towards her face.
Yeah, it goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Hio.
Hey,
Which, I mean,
how's everybody doing?
Good. But if Richard Allen is the only one doing this, and he's got her, on her side, or however he's doing that to cut her throat, then where's the other one? Where's the other girl?
Right.
There's no restraint. There's no ligature marks. The PI just confirmed that, who saw the autopsy. There was no ligature markings.
Yeah.
Well, the prosecution just says it's him. Come on, guys. It's really him.
Right.
Who cares about the good questions you're asking? It was just Richard. He somehow did it all by himself.
Yeah. And why the sticks were placed on the girls. The defense theory is that Liberty German and Abigail Williams' final resting place was related to Norse paganism / Odinism and ritualistic unaliving. Richard Allen has a Sixth Amendment right to present its theory of why the victim's body was placed in its final resting place and why sticks / branches were placed on her body. 19. The defense believes that both Liberty's and Abigail's bodies were placed there because of the desire of Odinists to post the body and form the sticks on the body in an arrangement for reasons only understood by the person or people that unalived the victims. Dr. Perlmutter has testified as to how the sticks would only have meaning to the people who were involved in the unalivings. Additionally, the defense expert, Dr. Don Perlmutter, indicated in the August 1st, 2024 hearing that the arrangement of sticks was not an undoing, as an undoing is typically an attempt by the unaliver or unalivers to provide dignity to the victim. Hallmarks of an undoing might be closing the eyes and mouth of the victims. In this case, the girls' mouths and eyes were open, and one victim was displayed naked in an undignified manner. This would be inconsistent with an undoing. The defense should have the opportunity to explain what it believes is an undoing, and how the crime scene does not exhibit an undoing. This section is titled Evidence Introduced Before and During the Trial That Supports the Introduction of Third-Party Suspects Elvis Fields and Brad Holder. On Saturday, October 25th, 2024, Lieutenant Holman was asked a question about how many people were involved in the unaliving of the victims. Number 22, Lieutenant Holman offered that only one person was involved in the unalivings. 23, after offering that only one person was involved in the unalivings, Lieutenant Holman offered the following as part of his reasoning for believing that only one person was involved in the unalivings is that, based on his training and experience, when more than one person is involved in a crime, there is often a point in time when one of the participants will discuss the crime or reveal the crime, whereas when it is only one person, it is much easier to. So this is the important part, though. I'm going to back it up.
Yeah, that's wow.
No, it's only
But
one
no,
man,
I mean,
because if there was two, he would have already spilled the beans. That's like science.
They always do
oh
that.
yeah,
Come
but
on.
he walks into a trap with that one. Like this is like the best part of it. It's really important, and they're about to show how they're like, okay, all right, if that's the case, well, why then when this happened, how can you still say it was just that? So yeah, it's interesting. This is like the most important part. In a crime, there's often a point in time when one of the participants will discuss the crime or reveal the crime, whereas when it is only one person, it is much easier to contain that secret. That was Lieutenant Holman's theories that supported his belief that only one person committed the unalivings. Now at number 24, since September 18th, 2023, the defense has consistently maintained that evidence supports that Elvis Fields was a participant in the unalivings, along with Brad Holder and others. Number 25, according to Lieutenant Holman's theory, as testified to under oath on October 25th, 2024, if it is true that Elvis Fields and Brad Holder were both involved in the unalivings, then it is likely that one of them will have admitted to being involved in the unalivings or providing incriminating statements concerning being at the unalivings. Evidence exists that supports the defense contention that multiple people were involved in the unaliving, and also supports Lieutenant Holman's theory that if multiple people were involved in a crime, that at least one of them will reveal the crime to others. For example, blood spatter expert Pat Ceriso testified that it is possible that both girls were unalived at the same time, which would indicate that more than one person was involved in the crime. Exactly. Additionally, Pat Ceriso also admitted that one explanation for Abby having no blood on her hands is that while her neck was being cut, someone else held her hands down. Number 29, law enforcement conducting the investigation into the murders have interviewed one suspect, Elvis Fields, who A, asked inculpating questions to a state trooper, and B, has connections to those who have incriminating evidence on their social media, as well as direct connection. Now that picture was the only thing I found about the Facebook. You just referenced something else. I'm going to try to back it up and grab that real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, if
Number
that
29, law enforcement conducting the.
No, I was
What?
just gonna say
I'm sorry, love.
yeah, I was just gonna say if that's considered not circumstantial evidence, but yet what they had on Richard was considered circumstantial evidence, then I don't know what I don't know what that means. I honestly don't know what that means.
Exactly. Good point. Good point. Oh, it gets worse. Investigation into the murders have interviewed one suspect, Elvis Fields, who A, asked inculpating questions to a state trooper, and B, has connections to those who have incriminating evidence on their social media. So he painted this picture, and that was what I saw, and it's like laid out in the same way that one of the girls was laid out. I haven't heard about the Facebook post where he's got sticks placed over 2 girls in the picture.
This picture I just found out about, the picture of 2 girls with stick formations. I don't know if it was Rosie or Baldwin, but one of them were just talking about the fact that they actually went to the guy that had the photo and saw it with their own eyes. Like, and confirmed it's 100% fact. It's 100% was on Brad Holder's Facebook. The only thing is, it was like years prior, maybe like 2009-ish, but still, this is a common interest this man has. He puts these runes all over his Facebook. He has these weird drawings. He's talking about this shit openly. And then years prior to the murder, he has a photo of this. Maybe he was depicting a years-long fantasy he had. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm driving home right now, but we do have that picture of his Facebook, of that on his Facebook in our Discord. So I will get that to you. So yeah, it's in our Discord. I'm driving home, but it was sent to us. So yeah, we do have it.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Yeah. It's frustrating because people know it's out there. There are other people that were involved in the case that knew it was out there. And I mean, that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't have an opinion either way because I don't know enough about the case. But what I do know is that it was sent to it was sent to us, and it shows that it's a Facebook, and it shows Brad Holder. I don't know who the guy is. I don't know the first thing about it. I just know we have it.
No, that's amazing.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's somewhere in our Discord the last couple of days, Donna. I'll have to go. Like I said, I'm driving home right now, but I wouldn't miss an opportunity to say hello to everybody.
Yeah, when you can, send it through. Thank you so much. That's huge.
You're in the Discord, so you should see it too. It might be in the Delphi chat. I'll have to look.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll check it out, and thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Oh, I'm a
You're
parade.
welcome. Is it really loud me driving home? Like, is it loud? Because I'm usually on my like really good mic, like in
No,
my
it's
car.
good. It's
Okay,
good.
good.
Yeah, you're clearer
Okay.
than all of us, probably.
Didn't want to be rude. Okay, carry on.
Okay, yeah, it's gonna kind of get into a little bit more who Brad Holder is in just a minute, and these people related to the crime, but I appreciate you coming up and sharing that, as well as direct connection to one of the victims. 30. Therefore, evidence exists that multiple people were involved in the unalivings, rendering all purported alibis as suspect due to the ability for the ringleader to claim an alibi while others are doing his bidding in terms of abducting the victims. This is me speaking. Think of Charles Manson, how he was able to get them to all go to the hills of California and do those horrific things that they did, but he was the ringleader, but because he was not there physically, he thought he could escape justice for that. That's kind of like what they're talking about. Okay. Back to the document. 31. Brad Holder's first alibi, for example, would allow him to be in Delphi no later than 2:30, perhaps earlier, while Elvis. Okay, it's going to show you how one person could have done a few things while another person was away, kind of like the Manson story. I want to show you these 2 pictures of them beside each other. Hold on. That's kind of like what they're talking about. Okay. Back to the document. 31. Brad Holder's first. Okay, this is Brad Holder, and this is Bridge Guy over here.
Very similarities.
Yeah, they look a lot alike, and his son alibi, for example, would allow him to be in Delphi no later than 2:30. Talking about the alibis. His son dated, I think it was Libby, and there's going to be a picture of that here in just a minute. So it was his son. Libby was his son's girlfriend.
Okay.
No, it was Abby, I believe. I'm sorry, Abby. Abby was his son's girlfriend at one point.
Yes, there's a picture of them together too.
Perhaps earlier, while Elvis Fields. Yeah, there's a picture of them together. Oh, dang it. Hold on just a minute. I pushed the forward button instead of the pause button.
Hold on just a minute.
Come
Coming up, we'll look.
No, we're not.
And
Hold on
this is
just a minute.
this is like, how in the hell did the authorities fuck up with at least this part when questioning anyone related to the girls, friends, families, boyfriends, and yet this never seems to well, some officers, or maybe the FBI at least, but no one else. That just fascinates me.
Right. Mm-hmm. Here we go.
That's so crazy. Mm-hmm.
Is Cara in here still? Or is she already gone for the day? Because I can't see the chat.
Is who?
Cara, whatever the name is. I call her Cara.
I don't know. She
She's
was
still
in here.
She was.
I don't see
Cara?
her right now.
Kara?
Come
Tahara?
to aisle
Kira.
4, please. Cara, come to aisle 4, please. Thank you.
Abellis, thank you so much for the support. Abellis says, from the web, in Norse mythology, Odin hanged himself upside down from the tree of life. Yggdrasil for 9 days and nights. The act of self-sacrifice was intended to gain wisdom and knowledge of the ruins and other worlds. Oh, wow. Thank you, Trixie. I'll pull that up. Thank you, Abellis, for the support, and thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. That's interesting. Yes, his son dated Abby. So it's going to talk about that. Hold on just a minute.
Were those girls of dating age? Am I missing something?
No, they were not. And he was much older. She was, 13? He was 18, 17?
And they were allowed to date? Is that?
I believe it was in secret, kind of. On her family's end, I'm not sure that they knew.
Never trust an 18-year-old dating a 13-year-old. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. Abducted the victims and held them awaiting Holder. 32, in 2018, law enforcement pulled Elvis Fields in for questioning to the Rushville Police Department, and at the end of the interview took Elvis's DNA and then explained to Elvis their reason for taking his DNA. 33, at the conclusion of the interview, Trooper Kevin Murphy drove Elvis back to his home. 34, after Trooper Murphy dropped Elvis off at Elvis's home, Elvis walked towards his home and then turned around and approached Kevin Murphy's car. After getting close to Trooper Murphy's vehicle, Elvis asked Trooper Murphy, quote, if my spit was found on the girls, but I have an explanation for it, would I still be in trouble? So
I wanted to share this
Girls
with you guys
plural?
real quick. This is from another document, and it reads, Unified Command was aware
So-
that Elvis Fields confessed to his sister
Okay.
that he, Elvis, was
I hate
involved in
when it does this. Like, I've hit pause 5 times. Okay. So he asked if my spit was found on one of the girls, but I could tell you why. Would I still be in trouble? And Richard Allen is guilty, though, right?
I mean,
okay.
that's
One
just
of the
as
girls, or did he say girls plural? I thought you just said
He said
if
one of the
if
girls.
my saliva was located on the girls.
I think he said one of the girls.
I think
okay.
that's that's a good actually point. It's important if he said one or both.
Well,
Because that's
damn.
very
Let's listen.
specific if he said one.
Right.
Yeah.
God, that kind of
Let's listen
excuse.
again.
Jesus. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's insane. Kevin Murphy's car. After getting close to Trooper Murphy's vehicle, Elvis asked Trooper Murphy, quote, if my spit was found on the girls, but I have an explanation for it, would I still be in?
The girls.
Okay, so he did say plural girls. I apologize.
But
it was
still.
girls. Yeah, I mean, what
No,
the hell do
you
you
spoke.
mean?
That's what you spoke. That's what I heard, because that's what you said. Is he said on the girls, and girls is a plural as opposed to is my saliva located on one of these girls, and if so, he's still guilty, right? But him saying, if he's actually said, but what if something of mine is located on the girls, plural? That's a different ball game.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why, but no one cares because
No, he just does spitting shooting practice in that area, like every day.
Yeah, in the area where there's 2 deceased girls and you saw the bodies and spit on them, but yeah. Okay.
I didn't do anything, officer.
Bad girl, no. Brad Holder's son Logan dated Abby. Sorry, I just saw in chat she said Elvis. I just wanted to make that known.
Oh yeah, it's gonna show that in just a second, and a picture of them together. Which
Quick
is interesting.
question: is Elvis still alive or is he dead?
Ah,
Is that a joke?
No, no.
But
Be serious. They're serious this time. Is Mr.
well,
Fields dead? Yeah.
he's alive.
Okay.
yeah, he's alive.
Hmm.
In trouble. I wanted to share this with you guys real quick. This is from another document, and it reads, Unified Command was aware that Elvis Fields confessed to his sister that he, Elvis, was involved in the unalivings, even providing to his sister intimate crime scene details of which only those present at the crime scene would have familiarity. Additionally, Elvis Fields told his sister Mary on February 14, 2017, that he was present at the unalivings and that he, Elvis, now had a brother and was now part of a gang. In February 2018, Elvis had been questioned by law enforcement but denied involvement in the unalivings. However, after being dropped off at his trailer following questions, Elvis turned around and walked back to the police car, according to the police report, and asked the state trooper if his, quote, Elvis's spit is found on the girls, but he could explain it away, would he still be in trouble? The state trooper that heard Elvis utter these words, Trevor Murphy, was not part of the Unified Command, but immediately relayed Elvis's disturbing question to Jay Harper of Unified Command. Elvis also admitted to a different sister, Joyce, that he had in fact spit on one of the girls. Elvis told Joyce that he, Elvis, was on a trail and a bridge with two girls that were unalived and that he was going away for a long time.
Now, the problem here
DNA
is that
analysis,
Elvis
Stacey
is
Gozinski testified
sorry.
at the end of her. No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
good. Go ahead.
The
No.
problem here is that Elvis is of diminished capacity. I'm not sure how much. So it's a very sticky situation where that's concerned.
Okay, thank you for putting that out there because that's important
I'm
to
saying
remember.
that, well, saying that he's diminished capacity, are you saying that he's less culpable if he's done something? Or are you saying that he
Well,
might say things or confess to things that he did not do? What is your reference to that?
Well, a lot of the time, people who are of that, they have a hard time prosecuting them, or, it's just like there's so many ways to say that they don't know what they're talking about necessarily, or they're just making it up, or you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. In your reference, you're saying that diminished capacity for him would mean that he might have falsely said he did something he didn't. Is that what you're thinking? Is that the
No,
direction you're leaning?
in my head, it makes me think that's what law enforcement was thinking, and that's why they didn't pursue him so much.
Yeah.
Like he's slow or just too stupid.
He's like I don't even really know what's going on with his mental capacity. I'm just told he's like the town, like he's not all there.
Right.
Okay.
Real quick, Mommy Ball said, have you guys seen the actual original pics? I heard that bridge guy was nowhere near them. He was about a tic-tac tall and far away, and this is the zoomed in pic. Yes, bridge guy was so far away you could not see him in the actual picture. They had to he was like, from what I remember hearing when we went over the trial, he was really small, like the size of a tic-tac, and they had to zoom way in and use AI to even get that picture that we have. Need Some Z said, and now Stephanie Thompson and her 17-year-old daughter have died in the arson fire. Stephanie took the Fields sisters' polygraphs that confirmed that Elvis Fields told him he was there and his involvement. Yep, and they were burned in a fire that was said to be arson. I think that it was the judge's wife and daughter, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Her cross-examination on October 28, 2024, that a person's spit can be analyzed for DNA. 36. Additionally, evidence exists that supports that Elvis Fields was mimicking Brad Holder, and it says in parentheses, who lived 125 plus miles away and should have no ties to Elvis Fields' Facebook post, or that Brad Holder was mimicking Elvis Fields' Facebook post months before the victims were abducted. 37. Elvis Fields has claimed under oath that Brad Holder was actually mimicking Facebook posts that Elvis Fields had posted. 38. Brad Holder's son, Logan, was dating Abby Williams. I apologize. I was muted. So this is the picture of Abby with Brad Holder's son, Logan, I think is his name. And then this sketch right here is the sketch of a boy seeing that, I think it was that morning at 8:30 at the mailbox. I think that's what that sketch is of. It says one of the first sketches of a boy seen near the bridge or either at the mailboxes at like 8:30 that morning at the end of the driveway where the girls were found. And then right here's your picture of Abby with Brad Holder's son. Brad Holder is the one that looks like Bridge Guy that you've seen in this video. And Brad Holder had evidence that exhibited Holder's knowledge of a crime scene on his social media that no one else. I keep being muted. So basically, the boy you just saw in the photograph, his dad painted this picture. I'm gonna show you some pictures that Trixie emailed me. His dad did these things to like it. Brad Holder looks like Bridge Guy. He's painting these pictures. He's doing these things. His son dated Abby. It's all really
Right.
questionable. And then
It's
this
what-
one isn't even talking about Ron Logan.
And what I find interesting too is I've seen the crime scene photos, the ones that got leaked, and Libby is completely nude and Abby is fully clothed. And they said that when they looked at Abby's body, she was very clean, like no dirt, almost like she had been washed, almost like she had been cared for, whereas Libby was like put out there, hung out, like shamed almost. And that has always made me think that whoever was involved cared about Abby more than Libby.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would make a lot of sense if Abby was dating this guy's son.
Yeah.
Yep. Or that Libby was possibly the more, I hate to say it, but like the more desired sacrifice or target per se. Yeah.
Yeah. Else should know. Meanwhile, 125 miles away, Elvis Fields, who seemingly would have no reason to know Brad Holder even existed, A, followed Brad Holder on Facebook, mimicking his post, or vice versa, and B, was making statements that inculpate him as to being involved in the unalivings, including the expectation of the possibility that Elvis's, spit might be found on the girls. However, this would not be surprising based on Lieutenant Holman's October 26, 2024 testimony that when multiple people are involved in a crime, someone will ultimately reveal the crime. Okay, so I'm going to leave that video at that. If you guys want to finish watching that, you can. That was the most important parts I wanted to show you about that. But Lieutenant Holman saying that, if there's more than one person involved in the crime, basically one will snitch. And they're like, well, okay, what do you have to say about Elvis Fields snitching on himself? Saying his spit's going to be on the victims. Like, and so I wanted to show you guys that, and so you could see who Brad Holder and Elvis Fields and the connection with that is. I'm going to pull this up, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to grab these pictures that Trixie sent me so far. I think Keo might have some different ones, so we'll look at all of them.
Okay.
So I'll grab these and show you these, and then when Heo gets home.
So there's no way, and no one ever.
When Heo gets home, we'll look at the ones that she was able to find as well.
That may very well be the ones that I'm talking about. It may be the ones that Trixie sent. I thought maybe Cara had sent them, but it might very well be those. So, like I said, I don't want to talk out of turn because I'm driving home, but it may very well be the ones that Trixie sent.
Okay. All right. Well, you can just let me know when you see them. Susie Q said, and thank you for that, Heo. Susie Q said, Odinists are not the only group of evil people who have evil beliefs, and I think the general population don't want to believe there's actually a single evil group out there, let alone multiple, right? Definitely. Absolutely, Susie.
Yeah. That goes into, like I said, I'm into conspiracy stuff, but it goes into the idea of like, it kind of goes with the satanic sort of route, but there's always other, the belief for some people is that there is some sort of group of people or associates around the world that do this kind of weird stuff that involves sacrificing children. Sometimes it's sexual, but usually it's like a weird kind of esoteric.
But why why, I know I'm interrupting you, but why Delphi, Indiana? You understand what I'm asking? Just is
Right.
because that's where because before this case, before you guys started talking, I had no idea what Odinism was, which I think I remember telling allegedly that like I didn't know. Is that a central place where that started or has a practice? Like you said, there's a tattoo shop there with a name. Is that something that's got a history there? Why Delphi, Indiana? You know what I mean?
I'm
It-
not sure if there's a
Mhm.
history in that area, but I've known that it's not so much the Odinist part of it. They're into that, but it's also heavily the Verlanders, which is like a white supremacist group that's kind of been tying in the Odin stuff to their shit
Oh,
in
Right.
that
wow.
area.
Because
The
the defense,
Interesting.
Verlanders
Yeah.
in that area is a thing.
because the defense were saying
Gotcha.
that they believed it was white supremacist Odinists. They were saying, that did this. They always add
Okay,
that.
because my understanding when they were talking about that, my understanding was that was more into the prison system. It wasn't on the out. It wasn't more on the outside. So that makes a little bit more sense to me because when I was thinking about that, the white supremacy part, we were talking about people who were actually in the prison system. So
Hmm.
at
And
that
I
time,
thought that
so that makes
I
sense.
thought that too. But I kind of figured maybe they were also saying it's the people outside the prison too. Well, the guards, everything else. Like it's
Makes
stuff like,
sense. That makes
yeah.
sense.
But what I was gonna say when you asked about like why Delphi, the theory or the idea is that it's just groups of people around the world, I guess around the world or certain parts of the world where they have associations or associates that do these kind of things. I'm brain farting, but a good theory that goes along with this is a famous serial killer in Texas called the Candyman. I don't know, some people don't remember
Mhm.
him. I can't remember his name right now, but coincidentally, he admitted that he had ties to a child sex ring that had higher ups with politicians, celebrities, and also people supposedly in this group was or had ties were related to with Gacy, and there's another serial killer, child predator serial killer. I can't think of his name right now. So the idea is that these groups of people have always existed. Who knows how long? And they usually go to places where either it could be like a small town or even big cities where children can easily disappear. And at the time when these were, like to say, the Candyman killers were happening in the 60s and 70s, and at the time authorities thought most of these boys were getting, or young men that were getting murdered, disappeared, were runaways, and they
Mhm.
weren't taken serious as like missing children. So that's the kind of idea that some people are saying. I, it's
Yeah.
possible. I just, I can't say, 100%.
And like
Definitely a
everyone in the
possibility.
chat is saying, like Odinism isn't really like about murder
Right.
or white supremacy or any of that. It's more so that these
No,
guys, the
and I
Vinlanders,
don't think that, like I
have
said, I don't
right.
know any of that. I just know that when we talked about it a couple of like a month or two ago, the only thing that I had heard about it was, from allegedly's live, and so I was having to learn about it as we went. So I have no
Mhm.
dog in the
Mhm.
fight. I don't know. I don't have even any conspiracy theories one way or another. It was more of a learning curve for me and where that's coming from. So no judgment
Right.
on my part whatsoever.
Oh
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah, for
no.
sure. Yeah, no, I think it's just these guys, these Vinlanders or whatever, they like just adopted some of these Odinist
Right.
things
Right.
to themselves. Yeah.
Mhm.
But they're still weirdos in their own way. So it's like,
Oh, they're
yeah.
100% weirdos.
Mhm.
Yeah. So these are the two pictures I have. This is from Astru Warriors of Midgard. And it says, "Been a while, guys. I've not forgotten. I'm fighting my own battles lately, and the enemies are getting greater in number instead of fewer. But I look to the gods, and they give me strength to keep fighting. Hel, Odin, Thor, and Scotty." This is from my Thor blot today. A cool thing about this picture is the Thrumizad rune on the tree was from my blood, and that's been almost 2 weeks ago, and the imprint remains. And that goes back to there was a tree with a mark on it in blood. So that's interesting about that. I haven't seen this picture before now, but you can see some of the Odinist things. They've got the horn and, some different aspects of the religion. And then that was from, I apologize. This one was from, it said on here, I think it said, oh yeah, March 25th, 2017. This one is Brad Holder at Hervey Preserve and Labyrinth, and it's February 21st, 2016, and it's the F run. But I think that would have been after she was murdered. I don't know if it would be before or after. I don't remember the date that they were murdered. But those are the two pictures I have as of right now, and we'll see what other ones there are in a
Oh,
few minutes.
I never saw that F before. That's interesting because they alleged that there was an F in blood on the tree or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And then the guy.
And
sorry, go ahead, love.
I was just going to go real quick back to Elvis Fields as well. In his random ramblings, he mentioned to his sister that they had put horns on Abby because she had been too mouthy or whatever, he told his sister. On those crime scene photos, I do see two branches that are shaped like horns.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So that's a tip from the scene of the crime that only the killer would have known, and it's accurate.
Yep. I think Elvis Fields was involved. Like, there's just so much saying that he was involved. Susie Q said, I think evil is everywhere, and when murderers or sacrifices occur, it's either because two or more people meet each other that live in an area, or someone evil takes a proactive approach and leads others to evil. Accurate.
Yeah. That's true.
Oh, Trixie said she sent more, so we'll listen, and I'll see what we got.
I thought she had.
So, and we know that wired headphones were plugged into
Dumb
the
about the
audio
case because
at 5:44 p.m. on the 3rd.
Sorry, love. Go ahead.
you're okay. I was just saying goodbye. I might jump back up if you guys are still on, but like I said, I just got home. So, other than that, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me up and thank you for letting me be dumb and not know what I'm talking about. So you guys lead me through this case, much like Madeline Soto. So I really appreciate that. And thank you guys.
Oh my God, you're
Oh, yeah.
amazing. We
Thank
love
you, love.
you.
You are number
Yeah,
one.
we love you. Thank you for coming up.
I love you too. See you later.
See ya.
Okay. Bye.
I'm gonna actually be heading out my stuff. I'm gonna be going on the road, but it was really, really awesome being with you two ladies. I say guys, two ladies today, and yeah, definitely enjoy the rest of the stream, and I'll catch you later.
You too. So nice speaking with you.
Same.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Bazard. Have a good day. All right, so she's referencing the headphone jacks right now, like something being plugged in.
And unplugged at 10:32 p.m. on the 13th. And the only explanation for that is some kind of human activity with the phone. So there's no way, and no one ever said, and even the police admitted, Rick, there's no evidence Rick came back. So who's plugging in the headphones and who's unplugging the headphones when Rick is at home?
That's presupposing that the phone was there and the bodies were there on the 13th. I mean, you know, what the forensic data, the health data, the Apple Health data supports is that the phone was somewhere else and the bodies and the girls were somewhere else, maybe in an outbuilding, maybe in somebody's house, and the phone stopped connecting to the tower around 5:44 p.m. It reconnected at 4:33 a.m. somewhere else. Then the phone died because of all that activity. And then it died. And that's when, you know, the prosecution would talk a lot about, well, the phone didn't move from 2:33 p.m. On. Well, yeah, it didn't move. It perhaps was in a feral bag or a freezer or in somewhere where it didn't connect. There's a lot of non-connectivity areas in Delphi, and there's a lot of places, and some of the third-party suspects lived in the area around there. And the phone could have come back on at 4:33 a.m., died, then was carried along with the girls to its ultimate resting place afterwards. And that's, you know, that is an explanation that is that is supported by the Apple Health data. It's supported by the forensic data. And, you know, maybe we as defense lawyers didn't do the best job of explaining that part of the timeline because it's super confusing. You know, even as I sit here, I'm like, yeah, those are other facts, and that's definitively what could have happened, and it makes the most sense.
If you're the jury, how do you get past the fact that Rick admits he's on the bridge, dressed like bridge guy, and there's only maybe a dozen people on that bridge that day, and most of them are females. He's the only guy that anybody spots on that bridge who looks like bridge guy. And he goes, yeah, I was on the bridge.
Sorry, Lo, what do you want to say?
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just like, this is bullshit what he's saying right now, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm working on pulling up another picture. Now, I want to warn you that this one is going to be a little triggering. It shows like kind of a sketch of Abby and Libby. It's a little bit more graphic. I will show it to you though, because it talks about DNA distribution. Now, I apologize for how you see it, but this is kind of like more of the how the sticks were laid and how they were found. And it says DNA distribution. In purple is Abby's, in blue is Libby, and green is unknown male. And so you can see there's an unknown male DNA on her hand, her shorts, on her shirt, and then on what would this would have been Libby on her. You can see the areas where the unknown male DNA is. And then the items in the creeks were Abby and Libby's. Libby's shirt had none. Abby's shirt and pants had none. The Nike shoe had Abby's DNA on it. There was underwear that had Abby's DNA on it, and then there was not tested and unknown or none on the socks. So that shows where an unknown male's DNA was present, but I don't know if it was just like not tested or what the deal is with that. And I wanted to share that with you. Trixie just sent that to me. And then I'm going to share this again and pull up a post made by Brad Holder real quick. I got to open that in another tab. So we'll listen to this for another minute and I'll work on getting that up.
Real quick, that's another thing. All the clothes, the garments that Abby had on that were actually Libby's, that also takes a lot of time to put soaking wet clothes on a presumably dead body. So
yep,
that's all within that same 1 hour. It's
just
not a lot of time. Not a lot of time.
Not enough to do this.
Kind of resemble
he
bridge
didn't
guy.
say that he was on the bridge about 10. He said he was on the bridge between 12 and 1:30 when he would leave. And then you get this Betsy Blair, who was just a terrific witness in the state. You know, they did not want Betsy Blair to testify about certain things, and so they limited my cross-examination, or my cross of her. You know, she described somebody completely different than Rick Allen. She described somebody that was young. She described in their 20s, brown poofy hair. She didn't say that he's short. You know, Rick Allen is a short guy. Not one person, not any of these witnesses that the state claims were important witnesses said, yeah, he's a real short guy. In fact, we heard quite the opposite. He was tall. He was 5'11" or so.
Why don't you guys ask Sarah Carbaugh how tall the guy was she saw walking?
That probably would have been good. That was my cross. I don't know. I think we did in deposition, and she said average or something. I don't know if it ended up being that important with Sarah. So,
not one of their witnesses identified Rick Allen in court. Not a single witness. And of their eyewitnesses, no one described Rick Allen. They described the bridge guy, if you will, as not particularly tall, not particularly short, not in the right age group, nothing about him. And here's the other thing. How do we know that bridge guy is a guy who is seen on video behind Abby on the bridge? But there's no evidence that bridge guy is the voice on the video. That Teresa Liebert saw someone on the other end of the bridge that day.
Where the girls were, abducted.
Yeah, where the girl on the south end where the girls were abducted.
I was struck on that Saturday when Doug Carter testified that he was only up there for like less than 10 minutes. And nobody really delved into why he dismissed the FBI from the case. You didn't even delve into the fact that, hey, Doug, didn't you say once upon a time there were multiple suspects in this case? Now, I realize you would have been treading on thin ice if you'd have tried to go to the sketches. But you and I both know there's a way to tiptoe there without cracking the ice. So what I was struck with is why Carter wasn't, because Carter was the main spokesman for so many years on this, saying so many things on the record that would have led away from your client, but you really didn't pin him down on something.
Well, I would have liked to, Russ, but there was a sidebar, an objection and a sidebar, and I was directed what I was allowed to ask and not allowed to ask.
Wow. Like
Wow.
they wouldn't even let him bring up the fact that Carter was looking at other suspects and multiple people or any of that. Like, it's just ridiculous.
I
I
mean,
can't
that
believe.
she denied him a defense 100%.
Yeah.
He was not allowed to defend himself. I just there's no way this doesn't get a retrial. It's going to take some time, but
Mhm. So this is another post that Trixie sent me. It says Brad's post. Brad Holder says, any lawyers out there that would like to help me sue a bunch of people, please get a hold of me. Benjamin Reed said, the sad part in almost all of Odinism, those kind of sacrifices that were made were almost actually all volunteers during rituals. So it would almost be out of characteristics for Odinites to ritually kill those two Delphi girls, would it not? Sorry, you're not going through shit again. Sorry, you're going through shit again, brother. Brad Holder said, yep, me too. But thank you for your support, brother. Benjamin Reed said, Brad Holder, of course, you should also let them know that you are not the only veteran that has bounced in and out of gyms every 4 hours or so when they have had a burst of energy. I used to do that shit all the time when I lived in my apartment in Greenwood. It was nothing to go for 2 hours, go home, fix a snack, and sleep for 3 or so, and go back to the gym. Just because it's not normal to them doesn't mean it's not normal.
that's
Wow.
because his manual Facebook check-ins that are weird. I thought one was like 2:30 a.m. Maybe it was 2:30 p.m. But he like checked in and then a couple hours later checked in again. I also thought that was weird. It was like he was trying to establish an alibi, but then
Mm-hmm.
he says he's at work, you know. But his manager, also a good friend. Hard to say.
Yeah. Needsome Z says Goal absolutely took every possible opportunity away from Rick to defend himself. Absolutely. It is disturbing, Trixie, and thank you for sending that to me. It's real disturbing.
Those conversations, like whether it was in chambers or in sidebars, because it seemed like 3-1, and I'm being generous here, the prosecution motions were being approved or objections were being approved 3 times to every one for the defense. So what were those conversations like, whether it was the day in October 23 you guys were being kicked off the case, after the fact?
October 19th, the only time that cameras were allowed in the courtroom that day. I can't comment on any of that.
Why not?
I just can't comment on that.
Well, then, if you can't tell me the specifics, tell me the tenor or what you were up against.
I will say that, I try to be respectful and so forth. And there were good moments with Judge Gall. And sometimes judges and attorneys, not talking about her specifically, they don't see eye to eye. And there was a lot of that in this case. But there was also some good moments during the trial where in the sidebars we would, maybe chuckle a little bit. And I tried to be, nice and so forth. And, it was an awkward circumstance. And, it's, I can't say a whole lot more than that. I mean, I respect the judiciary and, I don't know what more to say about it. I can't say a whole lot more about it than that. Jennifer, I don't know what.
Judge Gall told us at one of the pretrial hearings, she ran a tight ship and she followed through with that.
Can you talk about what you and Nick McClellan were chewing on each other about after the sentencing? Why not?
That's between Mr. McClellan and I.
Well, it was said in open, it was appeared in open court, and there were conversations and statements made in open court that you felt it was necessary to go back and maybe correct the record or the quotes.
It wasn't on the record.
I've had 2 trials televised. My firm has had 3. I think the first murder, one of the first times was a murder trial that 2 of our partners, they aired their final arguments and stuff. And I believe in transparency. I do. And but that's ultimately a judge's call. For whatever reason, she didn't allow that cameras in the courtroom except on October the 19th. But other than that day, there was no cameras allowed, and I'm not really sure why. I respect the judge's decision there. I think transparency is important. As a lawyer, I never would have really wanted until I was in front of cameras on the 2 trials that I had that were televised. You realize as a lawyer, you're concerned that am I going to be worried about what I'm doing and what I'm saying that it takes away from your client's case and your defense. And I will tell you that the reality of it is if you're doing your job correctly and you're worried about the craft of what you're doing and just putting the work that you've put into the case into the courtroom, you don't even realize that those cameras are there.
Right.
So, you know, as part this being kind of a, I guess, a worldwide case that everybody knows about, I would be nervous if the cameras were in the courtroom. But at the same time, I think we would have got through it. And I think at the same time, it would have, you know, been good to be transparent. The judge had her reasons.
Yeah, the judge had her reasons. She said tight ship, as in no defense allowed, like Bad Girl said. That was her reason for not letting those cameras in the courtroom. I cannot. Like, she knew that she was not going to allow him to have a proper trial. She knew if the public saw what was going on in that courtroom, there would be issues, and that's why there was not cameras allowed, and it wasn't allowed to be transparent, in my opinion.
My only question is that because she is somehow like told to help the state, or is this just because she was so pissed at his defense team for the leaked pictures, even though it wasn't them, it was someone in their office?
Good question.
That's my question with Gull. I just don't know how deep her collusion, I guess, goes.
Yeah. Good question. The first judge was removed from the case or stepped down because he was scared of basically being hurt, from what I understood, like somebody hurting him. And I mean, it's just like when you see all these other things going on in this blatant corruption, it's like, is it a small town, you know, bad things happening and we're going to cover it up at all costs type of situation? It's my thought process on that.
Right.
Toxic says, so little man us now on his hands and knees, he's going to be he's going to be crawling soon. That's so cool.
You have a little one? How cute.
Yes. He is adorable. I've seen a picture. I've seen pictures of her children. They're both adorable. Need Some Z says, does anyone know about what kind of homes Gull, Holman, and Carter live in, etc., above their salary, you know, kickbacks kind of thing?
Dude. Need Some Z's. I saw you ask that in a different chat. I think it was yesterday. And I thought that was such a good question because I have no idea. There's got to be a way to see.
Oh, yeah. There's got to be. And I bet they are above their means. Sub Rosa said, just saying hello. I don't do the poor Ricky thing, but I hope you all have a good day. I will hang out when we're not talking about Delphi. Okay, Sub Rosa, thank you for dropping in.
I appreciate that. The poor Ricky thing.
Yeah, Sub Rosa thinks that
funny.
Rick is guilty. But
That's
yeah,
fair.
they just don't hang out when we talk about Delphi. I appreciate
That's
you.
fair.
Tomorrow, if I've got some information back, hopefully, well, tomorrow we'll be talking about Madeline Soto again. So hopefully I can see you tomorrow. Okay.
I don't know what they are, but I respect her reasons.
I think philosophically, transparency is better. It gives validity to the proceedings, and people need to believe in our system. People need to respect our system for it to work properly. And in this case, there were limited seating in the courtroom. As Andy said, there was worldwide publicity. I know that, you know, it was difficult for all of the reporters and the people who are trying to report the story in a fair and judicious manner. So, you know, philosophically, I think that the cameras in the courtroom are helpful in that it gives transparency, and people are more likely to believe and respect and participate in the system that's transparent and fair. I completely agree with Andy. I think the first couple of days, for me personally, would have been difficult if there are cameras on you, right? It's a whole nother layer. But especially in a month-long trial, you get into the groove of things and you're going to forget about them and do your job as well as you can.
Is this the table in the conference room where Mitch Westerman came upon the evidence?
That's real tough for me to talk about. This is the conference room where he told me that he did that.
Did the leaks set back the credibility of the defense or your ability to pursue the case?
Probably, you know, I mean, I'm just an honest, transparent guy, and it probably did. And it was very upsetting. And I was angry about it. I was angry about the, you know, the allegations that I intentionally set those wheels into play, because that's just a complete lie. It was a really dramatic mistake, a life-altering mistake for Mitch, who is actually, I've forgiven him. I want, you know, people don't may not expect that, or they may think, oh, that's odd. That means that you probably had something to do with it or something. No, it's because I'm a human being and he's my friend, and he's a good man, and this forever altered his life in a negative way, and he made a really, really bad mistake, and I feel badly for him.
So he's talking about the pictures being leaked, I'm assuming. And I'm glad he forgave him. I mean, from the way it sounded like it could have definitely been just an innocent mistake. I think about the sheriff in the Madeline Soto case accidentally releasing her crime scene photos. It happens. I mean, you would like to think that it never does, but accidents happen. I mean, even in our daily lives, accidents happen. So it's not above them to accidentally have a mishap happen once in a while. Unfortunately, those are pretty bad, but I can see it happening.
And I hope that human beings, can look at a mistake that somebody's made, even as a dramatic a mistake as that was. That was difficult for him to come tell me about it, and it was difficult for me to accept it. But over time, I talked to him and said I forgave him, because that's part of my faith.
Doug Carter and Jerry Holman put the death of the YouTuber on you guys.
Yeah, that's disgusting. And I would ask Doug Carter to listen to Jerry Holman's the audio tape interrogation, or whatever you want to call it, of that young man who had a daughter and a wife, and where he lied to that young man. And because I have that those audios as part of.
You hear that? That's a big deal.
Do you know about that? Because I don't know anything about it.
I only know, I've never heard this before. I only know that the guy who not the guy who actually took the photos, but I believe either the guy he gave the photos to, or another. I believe he gave the photos to his friend, and then his friend gave them to a YouTuber. So it's probably the YouTuber that is the one that ended up committing suicide. I don't know who that is. I wasn't really paying attention during all that, but that's very interesting that Holman tried to put his suicide on the defense for those photos, and hearing now that Holman's interrogation of this guy was brutal.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty shitty, and it's not the first time. Like, he's come up and said, like, I don't know if that was just now, I wasn't really paying attention, but he was saying that Holman said that he's unethical. Well, let's look at what Jerry Holman's done, and a very heavy duty interrogation, much like the one he gave to Richard Allen, I assume, right before he commits suicide. Not a good look.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Or what you knew about it.
Yeah.
Need Some Z said, I still side-eye Mitch Westerman and him doing that. He had no reason to take those pictures, let alone send them to anyone. Yes, he was arrested, but he was released and charges dropped during the trial. Oh, wow. Susie Q had I like her comment. She said, I watched Hidden True Crime cover this case live, and she thinks he did it. And she said that thousands of people unsubscribed from their channel and started sending awful messages to them and death threats. I think that is just awful.
That's terrible.
It is. And that's not acceptable. Some people have their feelings about Hidden True Crime, and I respect that and stuff, but just like, not trying to call out Sub Rosa, but people have said to me, not necessarily Sub Rosa, but other people have said, I don't like the way you cover Delphi. Can you talk about something else or whatever? And I say, no, I'm going to cover it. And the people, like, my advice to everybody is just, if you don't like that creator's take on a certain topic, but then you come back, you like their take on other topics, then just don't watch when they're talking about the topic you don't like. It's not a reason to unsubscribe. It's certainly not a reason to send death threats. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I literally went to her channel once before, and I watched 30 to 45 minutes of a video, and I saw clearly where she was headed, and I just didn't watch her again.
Right.
There's no reason to take it there. And that really pisses me off, because I kind of get the feeling that the he's guilty crowd is more of the death threat crowd. So knowing, like, the people fighting for his innocence are also participating in that kind of shit, please stop.
Yeah.
You are not helping Rick Allen whatsoever with that bullshit. Please stop.
Yeah. And if you feel like you need to unsubscribe from the channel, then do so. But like, I don't think it wouldn't be enough for me to unsubscribe. Like, if I didn't agree with the way somebody was covering a case, I just wouldn't watch them on that case. I would still watch them for other cases if I like the way they covered other cases. Would be my advice.
Agreed.
Definitely no
I
censor.
hate Nancy Grace and I listen to her sometimes.
Yeah, right. Perfect example.
The contempt that was filed against us, another disgusting thing. And in it, Jerry Holman is basically saying, I can have you arrested. You know, instead of just saying, hey, we're just trying to get to the bottom of this. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't commit a crime. Maybe it was a wrong thing to do in terms of morally wrong. And it was not a great idea. And people are impacted by this. And, you know, you shouldn't have trusted these people that you sent it to or whatever. Instead of doing that to this young man, he lied to him and said, I'm going to call the judge right now. And, you know, she said that I can hold people in contempt. And I'd like for Doug Carter to watch that or listen to that and then reassess his, you know, what he says related to that death being on me. It's really disgusting. And we deserve better than that.
Oh, it was Doug Carter that said that was on him.
That was pre-social media.
Yeah, I keep being muted. Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, him as a police officer to pin that on somebody, or, you know, a sheriff or whatever he is, to pin that on somebody, I mean, my thought would be, okay, if somebody, you know, that, let's say, as a correlation to being interrogated, kind of, you know, angrily, or however you would say it, and that person unfortunately committed suicide, like, would we need to blame you because that's the example you're setting here, and it's not even his fault? Like you can't pin that on somebody else. The reason the person did that is their own volition. But like, I mean, there could have been contributing factors, but I still don't think it's right to pin that on somebody.
I think Doug Carter is more along the lines of like Tweedledee, Tweedledum, like bumbling cop, doesn't really know what's going on, believes all the
Right.
guys around him kind of thing. I've never looked at Doug Carter and thought like, oh, he's very complicit in this. I think he's just very emotionally attached to the case. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Sarah said it's also the reasonable thing to do is understand that this is controversial and people will have different opinions than yours. Shaming those for different opinions isn't reasonable. Right. I'll never understand death threats and all of that. I never will.
Yeah, it's not that deep. And don't let other people get you that angry. You will never catch me caring enough about some random ass person to ever have me out of character. I'm sorry. I don't give a shit about you enough.
Right. Exactly. That's the way a lot more people need to be. Like, calm down. First of all, this is a controversial case. And I mean, yeah, you'll never catch me giving somebody death threats, especially on a free app where people just come and talk about their opinions and thoughts and speculations. Like, it's not that serious. It really isn't.
For real, especially on a free app. Chill.
Right. Yeah.
Social media was not much of a factor. Social media from day one saturated this. Have we entered into a new playing field, or what impact social media had on the pursuit of this investigation and of covering this trial?
It's fascinating in a way. You know, I came on later after Brad and Andy had already been through so much. And from the beginning, I decided I'm going to keep my head down. I'm not going to listen to any of this stuff because we've got 26 terabytes of data. We've got a lot of work to do. I think as we have discovered after the trial, that was probably a mistake because there were some things out on social media that were important on an evidentiary level. But I have a practice, Brad has a practice, Andy has a practice. We have clients who aren't Rick Allen. The manpower needed to do that would be tremendous. I think, you know, Andy and I have talked, I think you almost need to hire or have an expert in social media to be full-time filtering through these things because there's a lot of fluff, there's a lot of mistruths, a lot of lies, but there are some things that turned out probably were important to the case.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the gag order was a problem in that we should have probably had a hearing on that and asked for the parameters, because one of the things that would happen is, like Jennifer saying, we would get, podcasters, I suppose. I early on, I didn't know who was a podcaster and who wasn't. We'd get emails, I don't even know what, or YouTube people, and they would provide information. And at the beginning, you're like a hungry dog, like, okay, well, that sounds really great. And then you kind of, oh, okay, that was kind of crazy. But then there would be these nuggets. But then you have to worry about, because then, I would send an email and say, hey, thank you for this information. I really want to look into it and get back with you. And then the next thing you know, that's on somebody's YouTube channel. Okay. And so now you can't trust that. And then you want to develop relationships where they're giving you information, but you're telling them, hey, this is off record. I'm not telling you anything about the case. Whatever this conversation is, even just that I'm communicating with you, that is off record. Those people that said that we wanted to create a narrative through the media and try this case through the media, that just isn't true. I mean, there was nothing that was ever said on record to anybody, this is on record. And it was more about, can I get some information from you? But then we have the gag order to contend with. And by the way, we had evidence that the gag order was violated, very strong evidence by the state, by law enforcement. And, I asked I called the state police, their internal.
I apologize. I was muted. If you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I was just saying, yep. There's evidence that Jerry Holman and Doug Carter were emailing someone about the case, and they have evidence to that fact. But I mean, I don't know what you're going to do about that. Judge Gull's not going to give a shit.
Right. Yep. Toxic said, I think by keeping a lot of information so close to the vest caused a lot of wild theories to be created by the YouTubers. I think that's an accurate statement. I mean, I do have to agree with that. Yeah. Sarah said, when there's something that directly affects your life, I can understand getting worked up, but social media and YouTube, it's going too far. Shame and threaten others. Right. Exactly. Susie said, I remember when I was in high school, everyone embraced different opinions by having discussions and debates on the topics. No one got upset or felt spited, and we were still friends afterwards. Right. And like I said, I've got people here that feel like Richard Allen's guilty and they just don't watch and they come back later. I mean, I think that's the way we should all be about things like that. There's no reason to act crazy. Toxic said, I think the art of true debate has been lost in the newer generations. I completely agree. Neeson Z said, I feel like their view was so connected to the fact that the victims were 2 teen girls, which no one can disagree with, but I feel like their justice was all that mattered to them. Yeah, and my thing is, like, I want justice for Abby and Libby too, just like everybody else, but I don't want there to end up being 3 victims, because with this, it created 3 victims instead of there just being 2 victims to focus on and to advocate for justice for. You know what I mean? Now there's 3. Just because you wouldn't let them present all of their defense or a defense at all, in my opinion.
Internal affairs, whatever division or whatever it might be called, over a lot of things that I thought was wrong and happening. And I believe that was one of them. Is, are they going to investigate their own leaks? Are they going to investigate these other things? Jerry Holman wanting to charge me with a crime was another one. That was blew my mind. It's like a third world banana republic type of way to operate. Andy's going against me as of August 10th, 2023. It was a real difficult deposition for him, because I think up until that point in time, everybody was Jerry Holman's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then, we did conducted a deposition, and Jerry was getting, kind of flambéed by, questioning, like, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And the next thing I know, he the leaks happened. And then he went down and talked to the special prosecutor and inquired about filing charges against me when there was no crime committed. I was, if anything, I was the victim of somebody coming in and doing something. And it's kind of, if you just think about how crazy that is, that the lawyer representing a guy that you are, going hard against, and you're trying to get him off the case. And, I would say to Doug Carter, and I said this I think I said it to their own investigative unit that is supposed to look at these types of things, the state police's unit. I don't know who it was that I talked to. Seemed like a nice guy, but I haven't heard boo from them since. I haven't heard boo from them. I don't know what became of anything that I told them. I was concerned about lost evidence. I was concerned about a lot of different things that were going on in this case. And I went to their people there, and I haven't heard back. I've heard they've called me unethical. They've called the defense team unethical. And I have said this, and I will say this: we have an ethics panel here. I haven't done anything wrong, so I can say this with complete no worries at all. File something. everything that I have said is backed up with facts, emails, depositions, tape recordings, or whatever. Those, to the degree that the law enforcement has taken things personally, I backed up everything that I said. They're, on the other hand, just going out with ad hominem, they're unethical. And file something, and let the ethics, the disciplinary commission figure something out. And I'm not worried about it. I'm just not worried about it because we didn't do anything. I'm not perfect. I don't do everything right.
You do a lot right.
I think this
To
is a
that
good point right here.
extent, I was really troubled by the theme.
I think this is a really good point right here, that if they were being unethical, or if he had anything to do with the crime scene leaks, then we would have seen something filed. They would have gone after him. In fact, when the photos were leaked, he was named a victim on the charges of the guy who actually leaked them. Baldwin was labeled as a victim of that crime. And another thing, a lot of people keep saying that the Frank's memo is all hogwash. It's all made up. It's all fiction. Well, then show me some evidence to that not being fact. Please. I'm waiting for it.
Right. Exactly.
Theme on December 20th of the defense counsel being unethical, that, Brad and Andy somehow had something to do with that man's death. And this is by our top Indiana law enforcement. And if people believe this, you've now placed targets on our backs. And if something would happen to us, who's going to investigate?
Yeah.
The state police, the very people who put the targets on our backs.
That's a scary place to be in. Like, yeah, the people who put the targets on our back, they're really going to investigate it? I don't think so.
Yep.
What new evidence has come up since this case is wrapped up?
Can't talk about it. Yeah, she's looking at me.
Can you? All right, then let's talk. If you can't give me the specifics, talk about the process.
Mm-hmm.
Have you either continued to investigate, or new evidence, or new witnesses have come forward ever since the completion of the trial?
We'll be filing, I think, a motion to correct errors, to clean up the record on some things. Once that's done, the judge can either not rule on it and it's deemed denied in a certain period of time. She can deny it without a hearing. She can set it for a hearing. Once that's completed, then we have the notice of appeal to file.
If you were the appellate attorneys, what would you be hanging your hat on? Would you be hanging it on the evidence in the case or the judge's administration of the case?
They're the experts. There's two really terrific appellate lawyers that I'm so happy are on this case. They are unbelievably smart. They are terrific writers, and you have to be great persuasive writers, and I will let them make that call. I mean, we will work with them for sure in terms of our thoughts and so forth, but ultimately that's going to be up to them.
I'm assuming, though, you've got not only if there's new evidence, correct errors comes up, does correcting errors also extend to what the judge's rulings said, or the way she ruled, or often issue an order without a hearing?
Judge's rulings or the judge's ruling, she's not going to go back and rethink those now. We have some things in the record we need to clean up about.
Some new things and things that we've discovered since, and yeah. I mean,
but will they be allowed to present that or even talk about it would be my question. Will we ever hear about it?
Well, you've got 26 terabytes of data that was disclosed. You have, we had pictures of bodies and with no context. Just filtering through that. But you're so busy filtering through that in the investigation. There's, again, all of these social media, all of this stuff on the internet. And once you start diving through that and validating it, as attorneys, we can't say, hey, I saw this on an Apple discussion group and I think it's admissible, and introduce it. You've got some good faith that you need to do to make sure that this is proper evidence. We're still, I presume Andy is, I know I am, getting emails from people. I spent a lot of late nights sitting right here digging down, emails from people, facts that they're putting forth in that context. It seems, wow, we need to look at this. And then you realize, okay, that was a dead end. So we're still getting emails from people about different suspects, different documentary evidence out there that we're tracking down.
And
I'm glad to hear that people are emailing and trying to help. in whatever way they can.
For sure.
I mean, that gives me faith in the public. Because, sometimes I lose faith when I hear about the very thing we were just talking about, death threats to YouTubers on the internet just because they feel differently. It's just ridiculous. Neeson Z says, at Shaboogies, I will definitely take the word of the officers who continued investigating those leads, and one died over people who think Rick Allen is guilty any day. Yep.
Another thing is then when a trial is actually happening, and it's like a collision between live theater and improv, because you really don't know what's going to happen up on that stand. And there was a lot of that happening in this trial, but you don't know what people are going to say. You have, if you conduct depositions and so forth, you might have an idea, but then they may not even stick with what they've said in the past. So one of the things that could have happened that might, we might be looking into is what was said by some of the witnesses on the stand that was unexpected, and what evidence did we unearth to kind of prove or show that what they said unexpectedly is not accurate. Because in real time, you can't necessarily find these things out. You listen to it and then you're like, wow, that was unexpected. Now what can we do? And then maybe you look at the evidence in a different way, or you find out, you get your investigators on it, and then they start searching for why that person's answer changed and how it impacts the case.
Did we learn more about the investigative technique and the investigative process simply because there was such a spotlight on this case, or the things you saw behind the scene with what you identified as the holes and the shortcomings in the investigation? Those are common in investigations. This one really sticks out because the mistakes were manifold and so multiplied, either because there were a lot more mistakes or because we just paid more attention to this than we do a typical dope dealer shooting in Indianapolis.
Right.
There, before I ever got involved, Brad and Andy had done a fantastic job of digging down on a lot of the behind the scenes things. I think, part of the issue was 5.5 years had passed before they honed in on Rick Allen. And I think at the beginning, everyone was doing the best they could to find the person who murdered 2 girls. But too many Indians, not enough chiefs. So all this information, volumes and volumes of information is coming in that isn't being followed up on, and just because of the volume, right? I mean, they had over 14,000 tips. There were, in the FBI database, there's over 60,000 entries. And so
that's a lot of information to go through, and to narrow down to one person. I mean, that would be hard for anybody.
I think legitimately mistakes were made. Probably if you wanted to go back and do it in a wiser way, there would have been more of a logical flow of how we're going to handle all of this information. But, at some point, they became very myopic. They became very, all right, we have somebody. And even though, as of the last day of trial, or during the trial when Doug Carter testified, the Indiana State Police website on their homepage was asking for tips. So if they believe Richard Allen is a lone actor, why are you asking for tips?
Yeah, Kevin Murphy testified on August the 1st at our preliminary hearing.
That's a great point. If you think it was him and him alone, why are you asking for tips? Why are you asking for leads on other suspects? Why did you create a task force to look into the Odinism theory? They did dismiss the FBI's help. Sorry, Shaboogies, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just agreeing.
Okay.
Actually, I need to hop down and do some work, but love you guys. Thank you so much for letting me ramble. I appreciate it. I am so passionate about this case. So
yeah, me too.
It was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming up. I appreciate
everyone.
It. Bye. Have a good day. Thank you so much for coming.
That they always said it was 2 to 3 people, as many as 5 to 6. It was never one. And then all of a sudden they changed their narrative to, no, it is only one. And that just isn't accurate. It's not, I don't think it's honest. I just wish you could just be honest and just say, if you're going to try to hang the hat on Rick Allen, just say, you know what, we were wrong about the 2 to 3 or the 5 to 6. It did seem like it took a lot of people to do this. And I guess we were just wrong on that. But they have to just say, no, we always thought it was one. No, we considered the other, but we always thought that one was a possibility. No, they didn't, because if the crime scene does not lend itself to one person, 5'5".
I think that's an issue a lot of people have too. Like he said, if you really think that it was more than one person, then why not say I was wrong when I said I thought it was more than one person, and you know, my bad about that. Instead of being like, no, we always thought it was one person. No, you know, that's what we always thought. We never created a task force for the Odinism theory and things like that. That's the issue a lot of people have.
Rick Allen is who they're claiming. The crime scene does not lend itself to one person in the middle of the afternoon on a sunny day, doing everything that was accomplished at that crime scene. And it doesn't make sense that even their blood spatter person, his testimony, could be interpreted as there had to be multiple people there, because the lack of drag marks means that somebody had to pick, the body up and move it to a different location. And there was no drag marks, and that just kind of gets glossed over. There was multiple. I mean, the evidence is, in my opinion, just very strong. There was multiple people involved.
At the sentencing, Nicholas McLeland said Richard Allen is a danger to do it again.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he has to say as a prosecutor, and I get that. So I presume he believes it. I presume that. So
Presumes he did it the first time too, but there's a conviction. Rich Allen was 50 years old when he was arrested.
Yeah.
Never charged with a crime before that. Never convicted of a crime. There is nothing in his background that would suggest that he could do something like this.
And I mean, let's compare Stephen Stearns for an example. We've got him videotaping the girls under the door, videotaping his roommates back in the day. There's just the pictures on the phone. There is clear-cut evidence that he did this. There's a history of wanting to do things like what he did. There's history there. You mean to tell me you got through 50 years of life, or however many he was at the time, and there was never a sign of anything? Yet you have these other suspects that you were looking at in the beginning who have signs, relations, correlations with things like this. And you never looked at them. They're not, that's not who it is. It's this man who's never gotten in trouble and has no correlation with anything like this. That's who did it. Rachel said, I just can't understand how a reasonable person could think this was done by one person in that amount of time. Right. During the middle of the day, sunny outside. I don't think it's plausible in the slightest.
Is Richard Allen's life in danger behind bars?
Yeah.
Well, in my experience, Russ, here's what happens once there's a sentence. A sentence is handed down. Then the person returns to the jail, usually the county jail, almost always the county jail in the county where their case was, and they sit there for a number of days, maybe even weeks, sometimes even months, waiting for the Department of Corrections to come pick them up and take them to what's called the RDC, or Regional Diagnostics Center, and that's where a battery of tests are run, and they're trying to determine which is the best facility for this person to go to. And that takes 30, 45 days, typically a number of weeks. And I usually tell my clients' family, like, you're not gonna be able to talk to him while he's at the RDC, count on it, 3 to 4 weeks minimum. But yet in this case, Richard Allen was taken on the day of sentencing to RDC. And then I believe it was 6 days later, was taken back to Westville. And so you ask, is he in danger? I don't know why he's there. I mean, can we just have some common sense?
Wow, that's interesting. Toxic said, dressing a dead body is difficult. It takes a while to dress a dead body without experience. Right. Noise. They could hear squirrels and birds in the leaves, but didn't hear 2 young, innocent children being murdered. Stop it. Rachel said, Rick led quite a different life with his family circle. No history of anything but a few mental health issues. Yep. Susie Hughes said their entire time frame was like 45 minutes. So one person, 2 victims in the middle of a park, were with the weird things that were at the crime scene, and how the girls were found is literally not possible. Yeah, it's just literally not possible. Abella said, we were just saying the same thing. It's difficult for so many reasons. Hey, Linda, thank you for being here. Linda says, a tortured person will confess to anything. Think about the innocent women in Salem in 1692. Yep. Dressing my own body in wet clothes is difficult. A dead one, though, right? Needs some Z's. What a great point. Think about when you're trying to put clothes on right after you got out of the pool or something. Let's say you jump out of the pool to drive to the store or go somewhere real quick. And so you try to throw your clothes on real quick over your wet ones. Like, even that's difficult. I mean, think about a dead body weight, you know? I hope that they can prove it, too, in the retrial. Heo said, Toxic, how do you know how long it takes to dress a dead body? I was thinking the same thing. Hopefully she doesn't. Toxic said, if Abby was alive and they forced her to dress in Libby's clothing, then that muddies the timeline of when they were killed. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can we just, at least have the appearance that people care? I understand that he's been convicted now of killing 2 girls, but with everything and all this attention going on, the intentionality, the boldness, if you will, of sending him back to Westville instead of Newcastle, where they have a mental health kind of wing. Can you just try to at least look, like the appearance of being fair or something? I don't get it. Maybe there's great reasons why they sent him up there so quickly. But now it's my understanding they're not even allowed to talk to him. Family can't talk to him for a few weeks. Is that accurate?
DOC policy is after 2 weeks. When they're at the facility, after 2 weeks, he should have access to a phone. He should have access to his tablet.
There is a way that you can contact him or the lawyers, somebody, and I've got it in the Discord and I keep forgetting to post it. So I will work on locating that link of information. Of somehow you can get information to him or to his attorneys that then take it to him. I will work on finding that link, or it might be like to donate and help or something, but I'll work on finding that and post it in my community box later. Rachel said they're trying to cover up for themselves in a terrible investigation, right? Linda said, I think the girls were held somewhere else, like in a van, and then murdered and then placed at the crime scene. Absolutely. I agree. Need Some Z says, I just worry so much for Rick. I hope that there's so much attention on this case that he will stay alive, but that doesn't mean they still aren't horribly mistreating him. Yeah, it's sad.
Kathy tells us they told her 6 to 8 weeks. I don't know why they consistently treat Richard Allen differently than any other person charged with or convicted of a crime in this state. Westville wasn't able to keep him safe when he was there the first time. By their own doing, they made him unsafe. By their failure to properly diagnose, their failure to properly treat, the failure to keep him safe under his conditions of confinement, they put him at danger with his mental health. And there's no reason to think, because they're continuing to treat him differently than any other person in the state of Indiana, there's no reason to think they're going to do anything different this time. And now he's being guarded by the very people we cross-examined in court. That's a problem.
Yeah.
When I sat there and I watched the jury, and of course during the sentencing,
I didn't even realize that he was being guarded by the very same people that they cross-examined in court. That is a definite conflict of interest. Like, I don't even understand how they could do that. So it makes it worse, the fact that they took him from one prison and moved him back to Westville with a direct conflict of interest, because the guards were questioned on the stands. And then you tell his wife he can't even talk to him to 6 to 8 weeks when the standard is 3 to 4 or 2. I think she said 2 or 4. Like, that's gravely concerning.
He felt Richard Allen had been rolling his eyes during the trial of her, but I was watching the jury watch him or watch the evidence, and you could feel there was a lot of uneasiness on that jury, whether it was directed at the evidence or him. I don't know. I mean, there were people looking at the clock saying, I got to get out of this courtroom. What did you pick up from watching the jury or the way they watched your client?
Richard, that's always a tough thing. We talked about that in jury selection with the jury. Like, you're going to be here a long time, whoever's chosen. You're going to be looking right at him during testimony when people are testifying. How's Rick reacting to it? During crime scene photos being posted and so forth. And if you're innocent, he's a human being, and therefore he can react like we all would react to upsetting crime scene photos, upsetting testimony, hearing the grandmother testify about losing her granddaughter. That's going to be upsetting. And so what's a jury supposed to? Should he cry? Should he not cry? So we covered that in jury selection, and hopefully with the idea that they would go back there and say that should not be something that we factor in. So I hope that they didn't factor anything into that. I mean, I sat next to Rick most of the trial, and what I told him to do was write out. We gave him yellow pad after yellow pad, and he would just write out the testimony. he would write out the testimony. And
Linda, yeah, absolutely. Stinky Stearns is ordering things from the commissary, and Rick Allen is being treated like a dead man walking. Shame. Yeah, he's not allowed to get phone calls. He's not allowed to get letters. He's not allowed to order from the commissary. Nothing.
then when there was photos, I asked him to put it into 4 quadrants and start with the upper left and just describe detail on it, what's on there, because I wanted him engaged. Because if he's not engaged, that might say something to them. If he is engaged, but it's very complicated and difficult to know what to do. By the way, Jerry Holman was sitting right next to us and kept looking at Rick's notes, and that was very bothersome to me, to the point that I had to say, Jerry, stop looking at his notes. You know, it's, you know, he said that he wasn't, but whatever. I mean,
wow. Like, you're supposed to have attorney-client privilege, and one of the people that you're going to be defending him against is just sitting there staring at the notes that he's writing about the damn case in the trial. What happened to attorney-client privilege? Like, there's, wow. My God. Yeah, if Richard Allen survives this appeal process, right? Lord have mercy. Needs Some Z says normally detainees are not even taken to be assessed for a couple of weeks after conviction or sentencing. Rick skipped all that and was back in Westville in 6 days. He has been treated unlike any prisoner. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had been, like I said, I used to live a different lifestyle, and unfortunately I found myself in county, and there was girls in there that were waiting to be transferred to prison. That they had gone through trial and they were going to prison, and they would wait for took about 2 weeks, and they would come and get them. Yep, absolutely. Rachel said, I was so upset when the juror said his eyes were weird. Haldol did that to him. Yeah. Wow.
maybe I'm being petty, but come on. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is.
The question is if he did it. And the jury said he did. What's he doing on the bridge that day? The other question is, what are the girls doing on the bridge that day? Why didn't the defense bring up all this Anthony Schott stuff, that maybe that was their motivation to be on the bridge that day?
Keegan Klein was the subject of the motion in limine. We weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. Then we weren't allowed to talk about that. Yeah. For those who say that we don't have heart and we don't care, they weren't in here when we're crying.
You're not allowed to talk about Anthony Schott's profile that was run by Keegan Klein, or Keegan Clean, or whatever his name, however you say his name, when it's been pretty much proven that they were there that day to meet Anthony Schott. That's the whole reason they were there, and they're not allowed to talk about that either.
And looking at crime scene photos, or getting upset or getting emotional about the thought of, having to depose the families. I thought, I think one of the Holman or Carter said that we disrespected the family, I think, or some words to that effect. Read the depositions of the families that when I took their depositions. I think Brad and I and Jennifer, I'm sure she participated in some of those depositions, thought we were very respectful. I thought we were very nice. We were trying to be as considerate to their feelings, yet trying to find out, for example, they didn't take Kelsey's phone and do a phone dump to help the timeline, to help establish the timeline. And that's real tricky, because you want to talk about that as a deficiency in the investigation, yet you don't want it to appear as if you're going after Kelsey German, and which I wasn't. And so you have to do your job, yet you have to be. And so we try to do it respectfully. And I understand, listen, when you're us, they have to not like you. When they have to think, I understand they don't have to, but I understand why they would. And I don't hold that against them. I really don't.
Andy was incredibly nice and delicate in the depositions of the family members, probably more than I would have been. But look, I have children. One of the hardest things in this case, something hits differently, was I was going through all the cell phone data and all the pings, and thinking about those girls' parents. Every 15 minutes that they're pinging that phone, and you get your hopes up. I mean, I watch my kids on, find my iPhone, whatever, because I worry about them. And
Right.
I was in Bloomington for a mom's weekend, up late working on this case, going through those, crying, thinking about we're humans and we're nice people. Well, not everyone thinks I'm nice. Everyone thinks he's nice.
No,
but
well,
regardless, here's the thing. There is no justice for Abby Williams and Liberty German if you convict the wrong person.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the whole point of all of this. There is no justice if you convict the wrong person. There ends up being 3 victims instead of the most important victims we need to focus on, which is Abby and Libby. They don't get justice if this is the wrong person. And there might be more victims.
All of that does is double the tragedy, double the injustice. If Richard Allen is not guilty, there are still killers out there. That's not justice. Putting Richard Allen in a torturous condition isn't justice. I think it's not justice even if he did it, but you know, this isn't justice. And that's what we dedicate our lives to. That's what we are obviously passionate about. And we can be zealous advocates for our client and be mindful and respectful and mournful for the families and the friends of Abby and Libby. Those aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I think if my guess is, and I could be totally wrong here, is that the families are somewhat, if not very much so, influenced by what law enforcement say. And law enforcement obviously has such a deep-seated, I don't know if I want to say hatred, but a deep-seated issues with us as defense lawyers. I don't know that anybody's ever gone up against them, you know, as vigorously as we have. And maybe they're not used to that, but I worry that the family has been influenced. There's a case recently in Indiana, by the way, that it was a family, a guy. I wish I had the case, and we can talk about it now, and maybe you can look it up. But this happened within the last year, where a guy was in jail or prison. He said, "I'm innocent." The defense pointed to another suspect. The families believed he did it. Law enforcement convinced the families that he did it, and then years later.
I compared the ruins at one point. I'll see if we have time at the end of this live. I don't know if I will. We've got about like 11 or 10 or 11 minutes left. I'll see if I can pull up an image of how their bodies were laid and pull up the list of ruins to compare side by side if I have time.
Years later, it was confirmed that he did not do it, yet the other guy did it. And now that family has aligned with the defense lawyers, and you know, and they're I think they're suing the police, saying you led us astray, you know, and that kind of hit home to me.
Yep.
Whatever happened to your client's 2017 phone?
What happened to mine? What happened to yours? I mean,
right.
You know,
well, he had 23 devices, so
well, that's not really accurate, but some of those were not.
Well, I mean, he's got chargers, he's got pagers, he's got other stuff, but he just seems like a guy. It's got a lot of stuff. And then if you ask the question, whatever happened to his 2017 phone, I don't know. Did anybody ever look at his phone records from February and March of that year to see who he was calling before and after? Because if he had any unusual phone calls or it's the same 5 people he's always talking.
That would have been great. I mean,
why did you do it?
We did.
And what'd you find?
I think he called his benefits manager at CVS.
Yeah.
So there are no phone calls on there to any alleged co-conspirators.
No. And they looked for that. They compared, you know, the mutual friends on social media in terms of Rick and Kathy. In you know, shockingly, the only mutual connection was, I think, a pizza place or something, if I recall. But yeah, they looked at that. We looked at. There's nothing there.
Richard provided his phone, and they took the EIN off of that. So where is the phone? Well, did he get rid of the car that they said that he used? Did he get rid of the clothing that they said that he used that I never saw admitted into evidence, by the way? Did he get rid of, did he move? Did he leave? Did he continue to stay there? I mean, it just doesn't add. I mean, I'm a guy that has had how many cell phones in my life? I couldn't, one's here and one's there. And
right. I can't even tell you where cell phones I was using a year ago went. And this would have been 5 years later. Neeson Z says, but if Derek German was a snitch or whatever, so this goes back to the shed. Supposedly there was a meth lab in the shed, and there's a possibility that Derek German was a confidential informant, and that could be why the girls were murdered that day. That's the theory on that, in a nutshell, if I remember correctly. And Neeson Z says, but if he was a snitch or whatever and was potentially the reason for this, and him or others involved in illegal things, they aren't going to want to reveal investigation to ever. They aren't going to want a real investigation to ever happen, in my opinion. Yeah, excuse me, especially if they're involved like backdoor dealings like we see with Sheriff Sines and Judge Mullins over there in Letcher County, Kentucky. Exactly. Yep. Rachel said Kathy said she traded the phone in for credit. And I don't know if you've seen, I don't know if they're still there, but I've done that. Like the machine at Walmart, when you first walk in, there's a machine there and you can put your phone in it and it can have a cracked screen. It don't really matter. And you get money for your phone, like old broken phones and things. You just put them in there and it gives you money. I've done it 2 or 3 times. A lot of people do. Like, I don't know. I mean, now to be fair, it is weird to me that he had pagers and other cell phones from previous times in his life. I have a problem believing that only that phone during that time period was missing. And here you hear them telling that he did turn in a phone and they did look at it and they did see who he called during that time period. And it was only like, your 401k or whatever benefits manager for his CVS pharmacy job. Like, but you made it seem like there was every phone from the 90s could be located except this one, and you weren't able to check. And here we're finding out that you can. Oh, not much, honey. It's not, you don't get like much for it at all. I'd say maybe 10 or 20% of what the phone's actually worth. It's good if the phone has a cracked screen or something and you can't get anything for it. Like, you'll get a little something. I think we got like 35 or 40 bucks.
Hither and there. So,
all right. In your post-mortem, ever since November 11th,
I hope you feel better, Chuck.
You know what? Maybe if we just said this one thing, maybe it would have turned it around, or was it just a tidal wave of evidence? And if so, what was that one thing, that one approach that you left unexplored or unmaximized that maybe would have turned it?
I don't think that's the way trial lawyers think, is that way. I think it's more of, did we, in a more general way, did we lawyers focus on the right things? It's not as much as I should have asked that question. Now, that's a part of the process in the postmortems. Should I, the craft of what we do is more broad than that. And so it's like, should we have focused more on the timeline? That would be a thought of mine, is because if they hung their hat on the confessions, and Brad Rosie, by the way, he's not here, and I just want to say, I don't know whether this will air or not, but Brad Rosie had the most difficult job of all the lawyers, because he had to deal with watching the videos. He had to deal with watching the videos of Richard Allen, being treated the way that he was treated, and putting that all together and doing all that, and also the ballistics. And Brad just did a terrific job of that. But when I analyze it, and I mean, one thing I think is the timeline was so problematic for the state that maybe if I had to look back at it, I'd say maybe we should have focused more on that, because that would, the so-called confessions, if the timeline doesn't work, then nothing else matters. And so that would be one.
So he's talking about if he could change something about the case, he would have went back and redone the timeline, because again, like with anything, if the timeline doesn't work, you're wrong. It doesn't work. Nothing else works unless the timeline works. Shaboogie said they had his IMEI number. You can get everything from that. Everything. So, I mean, there you go. That's everything. But we weren't, notified of that, and I'm sure it wasn't allowed to be brought up in court. Rachel says she's got a couple hundred from an iPhone in those machines. Shaboogie said a phone's IMEI number, or the International Mobile Equipment Identity Number, identifies the phone and provides information about it. It is a unique 15 to 17 digit number that is encrypted into the phone. Yep. Rachel says, I agree with Bob Motta. Attack the timeline.
One thing that I was thinking about, just in a more generic way, it wasn't like I should have asked that question, or I should have asked that question. It's like presentation. I mean, I did the opening statement, and so I did a lot of hard thinking about that. Should I have done something different on that? Because that's the first opportunity for a jury to kind of hear how the evidence might unfold and what we were going to focus on. So I did a lot of soul searching about the opening statement and things like that. It's more broad than what you're talking about.
Did the jury get it wrong, or they came to the only answer that was available to them?
I think that there was plenty of reasonable doubt. I think that the headphones in and the headphones out blows their theory apart to pieces. The fact that not one witness identified Richard Allen. I don't know what the jury hung their hats on. They came back and very intently listened to statements in the video. I would be really concerned if the state of our justice is that the jury listened to the video of Bridge Guy and listen to Brian Harshman testify that Richard Allen is the voice of Bridge Guy. Brian Harshman has no background training experience to make that comment. You can do the voice analysis. He didn't do it. And so that would be disappointing.
Why didn't you guys do voice
Yeah.
analysis? If they didn't do it, why didn't you do it to disprove?
We don't have funds.
Yeah, there's that.
And when I say they could have done voice analysis, let me back up and say, I mean, how many seconds of Rich Guy's voice was on that video?
I think that they tried. I think they
Yeah.
did try. If I remember, they did try voice analysis, and it's kind of a, it's kind of a field that's not, you can't really trust it. So I don't think that ultimately. I agree with Jennifer. One thing I want to say about Brian Harshman is, the van was a big deal for those that paid close
Yeah, the van, I think, is what made the jury convict.
attention to the case. And Harshman stood up on the stand under oath and said, that Richard Allen would be the only person that would know about it. And it wasn't out there in the public domain. And that's just not accurate. I don't know whether, he knew that or not, but a quick Google search would find that there was 20 to 25 just quickly of van being out there in the public domain between 2017 and 2022, which means Dr. Walla, who was, a Delphi fanatic, could have gone to Rick. I don't know whether Rick ever said anything about a van. I don't know whether Walla was not telling the truth about that. She destroyed her notes. And it wasn't audio taped. By the way, can we talk about lawyers being videotaped while they're
What? Lawyers aren't supposed to be videotaped, but yeah, she destroyed her notes. That's interesting. And the van was widely known. I remember hearing about the van way back. Like, that was one of the first things that was talked about. And I wonder, like, to be fair, if you're concerned about the van and they're saying there's no way he would have known about that, could we not have presented in court the Google search that shows you very quickly that the white van could be easily found during that time period? Real quick, I got 3 comments. Rachel says another appealed issued Harshman was not qualified to do voice analysis on 4 words, right? I mean, and you're not, you need more than that. Shaboogie said dumbass van that everyone, including the jury, by the way, says white van. Rick said van. Yes, he did. He did not say white. The juror was clearly listening to commentary and articles, maybe afterward, but still. Everyone was questioning the van because it was seen in aerial shots when they found the girls. Yes, thank you. Toxic said, I don't think anyone's qualified to make any kind of voice analysis on 4 words. Exactly.
they're trying to have a consultation with their lawyer. Can I talk about that for a second? I mean, we're in Westville, and these 2 guys come in with a camcorder, and then they require, for us to even have a consultation with Richard, they require him to face them so that they can read his lips on video, 6-8 feet away. I don't know. It was probably about that. And we had no choice if we wanted to talk to him. Folks, that's just not, that's not normal. All right. And nobody seems to care. It's bizarre.
I can hear the frustration in his voice. It's not normal. Again, I reference attorney-client privilege. They have none. Why? Why are you so worried about them having privacy and talking to his freaking attorney about his case in private? No, they got to set up a camcorder facing him so they can read his lip. Like, stop. Linda said, we still need justice for Liberty and Abby. They have not been given any justice. This trial was a travesty of justice. I agree. Susie Q says, sorry, I can't remember what they said about the van, that they used it to prove the case. Yep. They said that he saw it during the time period. That's why they weren't sexually assaulted, because the van drove up and the person driving the van said they would have got home during that time period, but also said they weren't there that time period that day because they went to go check ATMs that they owned or something. Only the murderer would know, Susie. Didn't you know we are all the murderers? Yeah, everybody who knew about the van would be the murderer. So I guess, half the public is a murderer. Toxic said that van, I believe, is people who live on the private road. Can't remember his name. He's also got a record. Yep. He lived on the drive that was right where the bodies, he would have had to drive right past where the bodies were found at 2:30. He says he was checking ATMs in the first time he was questioned. The second time he said he wasn't. And if the bodies were there at that time period, he would have drove right past the bodies and the killer if he was indeed going there at the time period he said he was there. So a lot of people have questions about him too. I don't think it was Ron Logan. I think it was somebody else.
We just had to sit and take it if we wanted to have a consultation with our client.
That's a shame.
And nobody has explained why that was done. You know, Richard Allen was in handcuffs and so forth. And if it was for our safety or something, that doesn't make sense. They could have, you know, even just being there was a problem, let alone videotaping it. It's outrageous, but nobody seems to care. Nobody has done anything about it. Nobody said anything about it. Can somebody do something about that? I know,
Right.
you know, I just remember I have memories of them being behind us videotaping. And so you're like, you know, trying to talk as quietly as you can. And I mean, nothing that would be bad for us. It's just us trying to explain to Richard. Part of it had to be, here's where we're at. Here's what's going on. We're trying to assess how with it he is, you know, because it was happening.
And I mean, again, take into account his mental state due to being on Haldol. I told y'all about my experience. I took a half a milligram or something, the lowest dose of Haldol you could take, and I was in bed for 3 days. Didn't even get up to use the restroom, y'all. I flushed that shit down the toilet as soon as I got up and was able to get my wits about me again. But imagine trying to talk to somebody on that type of medication, and I mean, you're having to be quiet and whisper, and I mean, it's just, God Almighty.
Was happening, you know, after the first round of confessions. I mean, we were with Richard within hours of that, and he was a completely different person. I mean, he's completely different. I had seen him on March let's see, I think it was March 24th. I'd been to Westville, and it was like on a Friday, and I met with Rick, and you know.
We got like 2 more minutes of this. Real quick, Shaboogie said, Arn in production said that last night, and I cracked up because it's so true. Brian Weber is his name, places himself in his van right when the girl's phone goes dark, driving by where the girls would have been murdered and the murderer would have been. He places himself in his van, driving right by there, right when the murder was taking place. Stop it.
You know, you can see him deteriorating to some degree from November of 2022 to March, but it wasn't really anything what I would label as crazily significant. He was depressed and so forth. But then on April the 3rd, we went up there and he was a different person. He was just a totally different person, behaving completely differently. And that's when they started videotaping, and they wouldn't let us bring our phones in anymore. I mean, it was, you know, I don't know what to say about it.
All right. Is there anything else folks need to know or understand about your defense of your client, the verdict, and where the appeals process goes from here?
I would like to address for a moment the statement made by, I believe it was Doug Carter at the press conference on December 20th, where he said, you know, justice has been done, and if you don't like justice in this country, then leave. I have a moral, ethical, real problem with that.
Right.
Richard Allen has a right to an appeal, and it was very disturbing throughout the sentencing, throughout the victim impact statements, at the press conference, these pleas to him not to appeal. If you have a secured conviction, if you have a righteous conviction, you don't need to do that. He has a constitutional right to appeal his conviction. And to tell people not to question that is dangerous.
He also had a constitutional right to speak up and give a statement at his sentencing, and chose not to do that.
What are you going to say, Russ?
Yeah.
I'm not guilty. I didn't do this. You know, I don't know that he rolled his eyes to Judge Gull. I mean, I'll take her at her word. I was sitting next to him. I didn't see it, but I wasn't looking at his face. But, you know, why would you not roll your eyes at a verdict that is unjust, that is untrue? I mean, if that happened, and I'm not doubting Judge Gull, I'm guessing it did happen, but yeah. I mean, for the top law enforcement officer to say the things that Jennifer just described about you can leave the country, again, that's some third world banana republic type of way of thinking.
Right, exactly. Okay. So that's, oh my gosh, hold on. Stop with the music. Okay. That's the new state. That's another news station's 45-minute interview with them, and we'll get through that sometime this week if we can. Tomorrow, I am going to talk about Madeline Soto again. I'm still waiting on some stuff on that. So tomorrow we will talk about Madeline Soto. I know I've got some of my people that like Madeline Soto, and I haven't talked about her in 2 days. We will be doing Delphi this week, though. I'm planning on doing, like, trying to go every other day, like, you know, do Madeline tomorrow, and then Thursday do Delphi, Friday do Madeline again, Saturday do Delphi again with the YouTuber I have permission to use her stuff. In that interview, I know they talk more about the Odinism theory and things like that. I hope that you guys, I see some people saying that they hope you feel better. I know Toxic and Bad Girl wasn't feeling good. I pray that you feel better. I want some. I was just reading your comments. I'm thinking about trying to make tacos tonight as well. That sounds good. But I want to thank you all for being here. I want to tell you again that I could sit here and talk to myself for hours, but it would be without you guys here. So I greatly appreciate you guys being here with me every day and listening to me run my mouth, and joining in on the conversation. Let me get Inspector before he drowns. We don't want him to drown. I appreciate you coming up on panel. Thank you, Bazard, Hio, and Shabagas for coming up on panel today. You guys made this a great live. I really enjoyed being here today. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. And I look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow. Please stay safe out there. And, yep, I'll see you tomorrow. Have the best night ever. Bye.